The dust hadn't even settled from the train's departure when Elena heard the whispers start. She stood on the platform with one worn carpetbag at her feet and another gripped white-knuckled in her hand, scanning the small crowd for a face she'd only seen in a single photograph. Thomas Garrett, her fiancé. The man who'd written her 3 letters promising a fresh start, a decent home, a life better than the one she was leaving behind in Philadelphia. The photograph had shown a stern-faced man with dark hair and serious eyes. Respectable, she'd thought. Solid. She'd been wrong about a lot of things. Which one is she? The voice carried from somewhere to her left, female, amused in a way that made Elena's spine straighten. The one in the gray dress, Lord, she looks older than I expected. Well, Thomas did specify no one too young, said he wanted someone sensible. Sensible's one word for it. Elena's jaw tightened, but she kept her eyes forward. She was 26, not ancient, but she knew what they saw. A woman past the first bloom of youth, traveling alone, probably desperate. They weren't entirely wrong, which made it worse. The crowd was thinning now. Families reuniting, ranch hands loading supplies onto wagons, a few curious onlookers who had nothing better to do than watch the weekly train arrive. Still, no Thomas. She waited. 5 minutes, 10. The platform emptied further. The ticket master disappeared inside his office. A stray dog sniffed at her bag and wandered off, unimpressed. 15 minutes. Miss Ward? Elena turned so fast her bag nearly slipped from her grip. A man stood a few feet away, not the man from the photograph, but close enough that her heart lurched. Same dark hair, same serious eyes, but younger. Maybe early 20s. Yes, she said. Are you? David Garrett, Thomas's brother. He didn't offer his hand. His expression was carefully neutral, the kind of blank face you wore when you had bad news to deliver. He sent me to fetch you. Relief flooded through her so suddenly her knees felt weak. Thank goodness, I was starting to worry the train had arrived on the wrong day. David's mouth twitched, but it wasn't quite a smile. No, ma'am, you're right on time. He reached for her bags. Let me take those. She let him, grateful. Her arms ached from carrying them off the train. Is Thomas meeting us at the house? David didn't answer right away. He started walking toward a wagon hitched at the far end of the platform, and Elena followed, her stomach beginning to churn with something that felt like dread. David? He's at the hotel, David said finally. Asked me to bring you there. The hotel? Elena frowned. I don't understand. Why wouldn't we go straight to... He'll explain everything. David's voice was tight. He loaded her bags into the wagon bed with more force than necessary. It's just across the street. The hotel was a 2-story wooden structure with peeling paint and a sign that read, Grant's Lodging in faded letters. David tied off the horses and helped her down from the wagon, still not quite meeting her eyes. Second floor, he said quietly. Room 6. Elena's unease had solidified into something heavier, something cold. Aren't you coming? No, ma'am. This is between you and Thomas. He tipped his hat, expression miserable. I'm sorry. Before she could ask what he meant, he was gone. Elena stood on the boardwalk, staring up at the hotel. Through the dusty window, she could see the vague shapes of people moving inside. Laughter drifted out from somewhere, along with the smell of tobacco and whiskey. She climbed the stairs. The hallway was narrow and dim. Room 6 was at the end, door slightly ajar. Elena could hear voices inside. A man's low rumble, then a woman's laugh, bright and careless. Her hand was shaking when she knocked. Come in. She pushed the door open. Thomas Garrett stood by the window, the afternoon light cutting harsh angles across his face. He looked exactly like his photograph, except older, harder. And he wasn't alone. A woman sat on the bed, blonde, pretty, maybe 22. Her dress was blue calico, new by the looks of it, and she wore it with the easy confidence of someone who knew she looked good. She stopped laughing when Elena walked in, but her smile didn't quite fade. If anything, it sharpened. Miss Ward, Thomas said. Not a question. A statement. Mr. Garrett. Elena's voice came out steadier than she felt. She looked between him and the blonde woman. I'm afraid I don't understand. Your brother said you wanted to speak with me, but this won't take long. Thomas crossed his arms. His face was completely blank, like he was discussing the weather. I'm calling off the engagement. The words hit her like a physical blow. Elena's ears rang. What? I've reconsidered. It won't work. Reconsidered. She repeated the word slowly, testing it. You wrote me 3 letters. You paid for my train ticket. I sold everything I owned to come here. I'll reimburse you for the ticket. He said it like that settled everything. The blonde woman on the bed shifted, crossing her legs. She was still smiling, enjoying this. Elena felt something crack open inside her chest. You paid for my ticket, she said again, voice rising. You told me you wanted a wife, a partner. You said, I know what I said. Thomas's jaw tightened. Plans change. Plans change. Elena laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Plans change. I left my job. I left my home. I came 1,500 miles because you asked me to, and now you're telling me plans change? I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Inconvenience. The word came out strangled. Elena's hands were fists at her sides. She wanted to scream. She wanted to throw something. Instead, she turned to the blonde woman. Is this why? Her? The woman's smile widened. Don't blame me, honey. I didn't even know you existed until yesterday. Catherine, Thomas said sharply. What? Catherine shrugged. It's true. You said you decided against the whole mail order arrangement before I even arrived in town. That's enough. But Catherine wasn't done. She stood, smoothing her skirts, and walked over to stand beside Thomas. Possessive, deliberate. Look, I'm sure you're a perfectly nice woman, but Thomas needs someone younger, someone who can give him children. You understand. The room tilted. Elena gripped the doorframe to keep steady. Younger. Well, yes. Catherine's tone was almost pitying. You have to be practical about these things. I'm 26. Exactly. Thomas had the grace to look uncomfortable. Catherine, go downstairs. But now. Catherine huffed but obeyed, brushing past Elena with a waft of rose perfume. Her footsteps echoed down the hallway. When she was gone, Thomas turned back to Elena. I'll give you money for a ticket back to Philadelphia, he said. Enough to get settled. It's the least I can do. The least you can do, Elena repeated. Her voice was shaking now. The least you can do is explain to me why you brought me all this way just to humiliate me. I'm not trying to humiliate you. Then what do you call this? She gestured wildly at the room, at him, at everything. You couldn't have written me a letter, sent a telegram? You had to wait until I was standing in front of you? For the first time, something like shame flickered across Thomas's face. I thought it would be better to tell you in person. Better for who? He didn't answer. Elena felt tears burning behind her eyes and hated herself for it. She would not cry. Not here. Not in front of him. I have nothing to go back to. No job. No home. You knew that. I told you that in my letters. Then stay here. Find work. Plenty of women do. Doing what? The question came out raw. What exactly do you think is available to a woman alone in a town like this? Thomas's expression hardened. That's not my problem. The tears threatened again, but Elena swallowed them down. She pulled herself up straight, spine rigid, and met his eyes. You're right. It's not your problem. It's mine. And I'll solve it myself. She turned to leave. Miss Ward. She stopped but didn't look back. The ticket, Thomas said. I meant what I said. I'll pay for you to go home. I don't want your money. Don't be stupid. You'll need... I said I don't want it. Elena's voice cut like glass. Keep your money, Mr. Garrett. And your pity. I'll manage. She walked out before he could respond. The hallway spun. The stairs seemed to stretch endlessly. Somehow Elena made it down to the lobby and out onto the street before the tears came, hot and furious and utterly useless. She stood on the boardwalk, shaking, while the town carried on around her. A few people stared. Most ignored her. She was already yesterday's gossip, forgotten before the story even got interesting. Her bags were still in David's wagon. She could see it from here, tied up across the street. For a wild moment, she considered just climbing in and driving away, except she didn't know how to drive a wagon, and she had nowhere to go. Think. She needed to think. There was a general store 2 buildings down. Elena wiped her face and walked toward it, forcing her breathing to steady. The bell above the door chimed when she entered. The woman behind the counter looked up, middle-aged, sharp-eyed, wearing a stained apron. "Help you?" "I'm looking for work," Elena said. "Do you need anyone?" The woman's gaze traveled over her slowly, assessing. "Doing what?" "Anything. Clerking, cleaning, inventory. I can sew, I can keep books. Can't pay much." "I don't need much." The woman considered this. "Where are you staying?" Elena faltered. "I haven't arranged that yet." "Uh-huh." The woman's expression shifted to something knowing. "You're the one who came in on the train today, Thomas Garrett's mail-order bride." The words stung worse than they should have. "I was." Heard he changed his mind. Of course she had. The whole damn town had probably heard by now. Elena lifted her chin. "He did. That's why I need work." The woman drummed her fingers on the counter. "I got a girl already. Don't need another. Please, I'll work for room and board until I can save enough to—" I said no. Not unkind, but final. "Try the hotel. They're always looking for maids." The hotel where Thomas and Catherine were probably still carrying on. Elena's stomach turned. "Anywhere else?" "The saloon's hiring." "I'm not working in a saloon." The woman shrugged. "Suit yourself. Not many options for a woman alone in a town this size." Elena's hands clenched at her sides. "Thank you for your time." She left before the woman could see her cry again. The street seemed longer now, endless. She passed the hotel, the livery, a small church with a broken step. Everywhere she went, people watched, whispered, a few pointed. By the time she reached the edge of town, her humiliation had calcified into something harder. Anger, maybe. Or just stubbornness. There was a bench outside the train depot. Elena sank onto it and stared at the empty tracks stretching west. The next train wouldn't come for 3 days. Not that it mattered. She couldn't afford a ticket anyway. "You plan on sitting there all night?" Elena's head snapped up. A man stood a few feet away, tall, broad-shouldered, maybe 40. He wore a dark coat and a hat pulled low, and his face was weathered in the way of men who spent most of their time outdoors. His eyes were an unsettling pale gray. "I don't see how that's your concern," Elena said. "It's not." He tilted his head slightly. "But it'll be dark soon, and this isn't the safest place for a woman alone. I'll manage. Will you?" It wasn't a question. Elena stood, gathering what was left of her dignity. "Who are you?" "Rowan Cross." The name meant nothing to her, but something in the way he said it suggested it should. He waited, like he expected recognition. "Elena Ward," she said finally. "I know." His expression didn't change. "Heard about you. Whole town heard about you." Fresh heat flooded Elena's face. "Then you know I don't need your pity either." "Wasn't offering pity." Rowan Cross studied her with those unnerving gray eyes. "I'm offering work." Elena blinked. "What?" "I need someone at the ranch. Cooking, cleaning, mending. It's hard work. Long hours. Pays decent." "Why me?" "Because you need it." He said it matter-of-factly, without judgment. "And because I saw you tell Thomas Garrett to keep his money. Takes guts to walk away from the easy way out." Elena's throat tightened. She didn't trust this. Didn't trust him. "What's the catch?" "No catch. You work, I pay you. Room and board included." He paused. "Ranch is 10 miles outside town. You'd be living on site." "Alone?" "With me and 4 ranch hands, all men." Rowan's gaze was steady. "That's a problem? Say so now." It should have been a problem. Every practical bone in Elena's body screamed that this was a terrible idea. But what other choice did she have? Work in the saloon? Crawl back to Thomas and beg for that ticket home? How do I know you're not… She stopped, not sure how to finish. You don't, Rowan said simply. You don't know me. Don't know anything about me except what the gossips say, and I guarantee half of that's exaggerated. He shifted his weight. But I'm not offering charity. I'm offering a job. You want it or not? Elena looked back at the empty train platform, at the town behind her full of people who'd already written her off, at the sky turning purple with dusk. Yes, she said. I want it. Rowan nodded once. Get your bags. We're leaving now. He turned and walked toward a wagon hitched near the depot, bigger than David's, sturdier, loaded with supplies. Elena watched him go, her heart pounding so hard she thought he might hear it. This was insane. She was insane, but she was also out of options. She retrieved her carpet bags from David's wagon. He'd left them there, probably too ashamed to face her again, and carried them to Rowan's. He took them without comment and loaded them in the back. Climb up, he said. Elena hesitated only a second before obeying. The wagon seat was worn smooth from use. Rowan settled beside her, taking up more space than seemed necessary, and gathered the reins. He didn't look at her. One rule, he said as the wagon lurched forward. You do your job, I'll do mine. We stay out of each other's way. Understood? Understood. Good. They drove in silence. The town fell away quickly, replaced by open prairie that stretched in every direction like a vast, indifferent sea. The sky was enormous here, bigger than Elena had ever seen it. It made her feel small, inconsequential. Maybe that was better. How long have you had the ranch, she asked after a while, more to break the silence than anything. 10 years. You run it yourself? Mostly. Rowan's eyes stayed on the road. Got a foreman, Jim Hollis. Good man. Been with me since the start. And the others? Miguel, Jack, and Ben. They're young, but they work hard. He glanced at her briefly. They'll treat you with respect or they'll answer to me. That clear enough? Elena nodded, something in her chest loosening slightly. Clear enough. The silence stretched again. The wagon wheels creaked. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. Why did you help me? Elena asked quietly. Rowan didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was rough. Didn't help you. Hired you. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. He shifted the reins. I need someone at the ranch. You need work. That's not help. That's business. But Elena didn't quite believe him. There was something else there, beneath the gruff practicality. She just couldn't name it yet. By the time they reached the ranch, full dark had fallen. Lantern light glowed from the windows of a low, sprawling house surrounded by corrals and outbuildings. Rowan pulled the wagon to a stop near the porch. Jim? He called. A man emerged from the barn, older, maybe 50, with gray streaking his beard. He stopped short when he saw Elena. Boss? This is Elena Ward, Rowan said, climbing down. She's the new cook and housekeeper. Get her bags inside. Jim's eyes widened slightly, but he nodded. Yes, sir. Rowan offered Elena his hand to help her down. She took it, his grip firm and calloused. When her feet hit the ground, her legs nearly buckled. Exhaustion, shock, all of it catching up at once. Rowan steadied her. You all right? Yes? Elena lied. He didn't look convinced, but he let it go. Jim, show her to the spare room. Miss Ward, get some rest. We'll talk details in the morning. Thank you, Elena managed. Rowan's expression was unreadable. Don't thank me yet. He turned and walked toward the barn, leaving her standing in the dark with Jim Hollis. Jim picked up her bags and jerked his head toward the house. This way, ma'am. The house smelled like wood smoke and coffee. It was cleaner than Elena expected, sparse but well-maintained, with sturdy furniture and none of the bachelor squalor she'd braced herself for. Jim led her down a short hallway to a small room at the back. It's not much, he said, setting her bags inside. But it's warm and the roof don't leak. Elena looked around. A narrow bed, a washstand, a single window overlooking the dark prairie. It was the simplest room she'd ever seen. It was perfect. Thank you, she said again. Jim nodded. Kitchen's through there if you get hungry. Breakfast is at 5. He paused at the door. For what it's worth, ma'am, the boss is a hard man, but he's fair. You'll be safe here. I hope so. After he left, Elena sank onto the bed and let herself shake. Her whole body trembled, bone deep and unstoppable. She'd held it together all day, through the rejection, the humiliation, the fear. But now, alone, the walls came down. She cried silently into her hands until there was nothing left. When she finally stopped, she felt hollow, scraped clean, but also, strangely, lighter. This wasn't the life she'd planned, wasn't even close. But it was something, a foothold, a chance. Tomorrow, she'd start over. Tonight, she'd just survive. Elena lay back on the narrow bed without undressing and stared at the ceiling until sleep dragged her under. The rooster's crow jolted her awake before dawn. For a disorienting moment, Elena didn't know where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The train, Thomas, Rowan Cross, the ranch. She sat up too fast and her head spun. 5 o'clock. Breakfast. She stumbled out of bed and splashed water on her face from the basin. Her reflection in the small mirror looked like a stranger, hollow-eyed, pale, hair tangled. She did her best to pin it up and smooth her dress, then made her way to the kitchen. It was empty. Elena stood in the doorway, taking in the space. A large cast-iron stove dominated one wall. Shelves lined with jars and tins. A scarred wooden table big enough to seat 8. Everything was clean but worn, used hard and put away honest. She could work with this. The stove was already warm. Someone had stoked it earlier. Elena found coffee grounds and started a pot, then began searching through the pantry. Flour, salt, lard, eggs, bacon hanging in the cold room. Enough to make a decent meal. By the time footsteps echoed in the hallway, she had biscuits in the oven and bacon sizzling in a pan. Jim appeared first, stopping short in the doorway. You didn't have to. I'm the cook, Elena said without turning around. This is my job. 3 more men filed in behind Jim, younger, ranging from maybe 19 to mid-20s. They stared at her like she was a ghost. Boys, Jim said, this is Miss Ward. Miss Ward, that's Miguel, Jack, and Ben. Miguel was dark-haired and wiry. Jack was broad and freckled. Ben looked barely old enough to shave. Ma'am? They mumbled in unison. Elena nodded. Sit down. Food's almost ready. They obeyed, still staring. Elena ignored them and focused on the bacon. Her hands were steady now, purposeful. This, at least, she knew how to do. Rowan was the last to arrive. He paused in the doorway, taking in the scene, the set table, the smell of coffee and bacon. Elena moving efficiently between stove and counter. Morning, he said. Morning. Elena didn't look up. Coffee's fresh. He poured himself a cup and sat at the head of the table. The others waited until he'd taken his first sip before reaching for their own. Elena brought the food over, biscuits, bacon, eggs scrambled with a bit of cheese she'd found. It wasn't fancy, but it was hot and plentiful. The men ate like they were starving. This is good, Jack said around a mouthful of biscuit. Real good, Ben added. Miguel just nodded, shoveling eggs onto his plate. Rowan ate in silence, his expression unreadable. When he finished, he pushed back from the table and looked at Elena. After breakfast, Jim will show you the house. You'll handle cooking, cleaning, laundry, mending. Anything breaks, you tell me. Understood? Understood. The men work from dawn till dusk. They'll be out of your way most of the day. His gray eyes were steady. But if any of them give you trouble, you come to me directly. I can handle myself. I'm sure you can. Rowan stood. But you come to me anyway. He left without waiting for a response. The others followed, mumbling thanks and leaving their dishes on the table. Elena gathered the plates and started washing them. Her back ached. Her feet hurt. But for the first time since stepping off that train, she felt something almost like calm. This was solid, real, hers. Jim returned an hour later to show her the rest of the house. It was bigger than it looked. 6 bedrooms, a parlor rarely used, a root cellar, a washroom with an actual tub. Everything was functional, nothing frivolous. Boss built most of it himself, Jim said. Took him 3 years. It's well made. He's a good man. Jim's tone was careful. Hard, like I said, but good. Elena didn't respond. She was still figuring out what to make of Rowan Cross. The days fell into a rhythm quickly. Wake before dawn, make breakfast, clean the kitchen, tackle laundry or mending or whatever needed doing. Midday meal at noon, supper at 6. The work was hard, relentless, but Elena didn't mind. It kept her hands busy and her mind quiet. The men kept their distance at first, polite but wary, like she might bolt at any moment. But gradually, as the days passed, they relaxed. Miguel had a sister in Santa Fe. Jack missed his mother's cooking. Ben was scared of spiders. They were just boys, really, lonely boys far from home. Elena found herself softening toward them despite her best efforts. Rowan, though, remained a mystery. He was polite but distant, never saying more than necessary. He worked harder than any of them. Up before dawn, out until after dark, always fixing something or checking something or planning something. He didn't smile, didn't joke, barely looked at her most days. But Elena noticed things. The way he made sure she had enough firewood before the cold snaps hit. How he'd left a new coat on her door one morning without a word. The careful distance he kept, always proper, never crossing a line. He was protecting her, she realized, from himself, from the others, from whatever judgments the town might still be whispering. It made her curious, and curious was dangerous. 3 weeks after she arrived, Elena was hanging laundry when she heard shouting from the barn. She dropped the sheet she was holding and ran. Jack and Miguel were squared off in the dusty yard, fists raised. Ben stood between them, hands up, trying to mediate. "He called me a liar." Jack's face was red. "Because you are," Miguel shot back. "Both of you shut up." Rowan's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. He emerged from the barn, expression thunderous. "What the hell is going on?" "Jack said he fixed the north fence," Miguel said. "But it's still broken. I checked this morning." "I did fix it," Jack protested. "Then why is there a gap big enough for cattle to get through?" Jack's face fell. I thought You didn't check your work." Rowan's tone was flat. "Now we've got 3 head missing, maybe more." The silence was heavy. Jack looked like he might cry. "I'm sorry, boss." "What?" he said quietly. "I'll find them. I'll fix it right this time." "You'll do both. And you'll do it now." Rowan's gaze swept over all of them. "The rest of you get back to work. This ranch doesn't run on excuses." They scattered. Elena started to turn back toward the house when Rowan's voice stopped her. "Miss Ward." She froze. "Yes?" He walked over, stopping a few feet away. Up close, she could see the tension in his jaw. "You didn't need to come running out here. I heard shouting." "And thought what? That you could stop a fight between 2 grown men?" Elena's chin lifted. "I thought someone might be hurt." Rowan's expression shifted slightly. Not quite a smile, but close. "They're fine. Just stupid." He paused. "But I appreciate the concern." Before she could respond, he turned and walked back toward the barn. Elena stood there, heart racing, not entirely sure what had just happened. That night, she heard Jim and Rowan talking in low voices on the porch. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the kitchen window was open. "She's good for the place," Jim was saying. "Boys are eating better, house looks better. Hell, even the laundry's getting done regular." "I know." "So, why do you look like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop?" Silence. Then Rowan's voice, rough and quiet. "Because it always does." Elena moved away from the window, her chest tight. What had happened to him? What had made him so certain that good things didn't last? She didn't know. But she was starting to understand that Rowan Cross was just as much an outsider as she was, maybe more, and that made him dangerous in a completely different way. The 4th week brought rain. Not gentle rain, but the kind that turned the roads to mud and made the roof leak in 3 places. Elena spent an entire day emptying buckets and repositioning furniture. By evening, she was exhausted and soaked through. She'd just finished mopping the parlor when Rowan appeared in the doorway. "You need to stop," he said. "I'm almost done." "Elena." Her name and his voice made her look up. "You need to stop before you collapse. I'm fine. You're shaking." She was. Elena looked down at her hands and realized he was right. You need to sit down. Rowan crossed the room and took the mop from her hands. Now! His tone left no room for argument. Elena sank into the nearest chair, suddenly aware of how heavy her limbs felt, how cold she was. Rowan disappeared and came back with a blanket, which he draped over her shoulders. Then he crouched in front of her, studying her face. "When's the last time you ate?" he asked. Elena tried to remember. Breakfast? Maybe? I don't know. Christ. He stood and headed for the kitchen. She heard him moving around, heard the stove door creak open. He came back with bread, cheese, and a cup of hot coffee. Eat. I can... Eat, Elena. She ate. The food settled warm in her stomach, chasing away some of the chill. Rowan watched her, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "You don't have to prove anything," he said finally. "I'm not... Yes, you are." His voice was quiet but firm. "You're working yourself to the bone, trying to show me you're worth keeping. But I already decided that 3 weeks ago." Elena's throat tightened. "I just want to do a good job. You're doing a great job, but if you kill yourself doing it, that doesn't help anyone." Rowan's gray eyes held hers. "Pace yourself. This isn't a sprint." She nodded, not trusting her voice. He straightened. "Finish eating, then get some rest." After he left, Elena sat alone in his parlor, the blanket wrapped around her shoulders and tears sliding silently down her face. No one had looked after her in so long. She'd forgotten what it felt like. It was terrifying. The rain stopped 2 days later, leaving the world scrubbed clean and bright. Elena stepped outside to hang sheets and found Jim repairing a section of porch railing. "Morning, ma'am." "Morning, Jim." She started pinning up the first sheet. "Did you hear about the dance?" Jim's hammer paused mid-swing. "What dance?" "In town, Saturday night. Miguel mentioned it at breakfast." "Oh." Jim went back to hammering. "Yeah, the harvest dance. They do it every year." "Are you going?" "Me? Nah. Too old for that nonsense." He glanced at her. "You thinking about it?" Elena shook her head quickly. "No, I was just curious." But the truth was, she had been thinking about it. Not because she wanted to go, the idea of facing that town again made her stomach turn, but because she wondered if Rowan would. She told herself it didn't matter. Saturday arrived hot and clear. The boys left mid-afternoon, scrubbed and nervous in their best clothes. Even Jim went, grumbling the whole time. Rowan stayed behind. Elena made a simple supper for the two of them, soup and bread. They ate in silence, the empty house echoing around them. "You didn't want to go?" she asked finally. Rowan looked up. "To the dance?" "Yes. Not really my thing." He went back to his soup. "You?" "Definitely not." "Because of Garrett?" The name hit like a slap. Elena's spoon clattered against her bowl. "Among other reasons." Rowan nodded slowly. "He's a coward." "What?" "Thomas Garrett." Rowan's expression was hard. "I've known him since he was a kid. Always took the easy way out. Always blamed someone else when things went wrong." He met her eyes. "You're better off without him." "I know that." Elena's voice was sharper than she intended. "But knowing it doesn't make it hurt less." "No," Rowan agreed. "It doesn't." They finished eating in silence. Elena cleaned up while Rowan disappeared outside to check the horses. When she was done, she found him standing on the porch, staring out at the darkening prairie. "It's a good night," he said without looking at her. Elena joined him. The sky was streaked with purple and gold, stars just beginning to emerge. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed softly. "Yes," she said. "It is." They stood there together, not quite touching, and for the first time since arriving, Elena felt something unfurl in her chest. Not happiness, exactly, but something close, something like hope. The days stretched longer as summer deepened, and with them came a rhythm Elena hadn't expected to find. She rose before the sun, her hands already knowing which floorboards creaked, which stove damper needed jiggling, where the coffee tins sat on the third shelf. The ranch was becoming familiar in a way that unsettled her, not because it felt wrong, but because it felt dangerously close to right. She was hanging wash on a Tuesday morning, 3 months into her time at the Cross Ranch, when she heard the horse approaching. Fast. Too fast for a casual visitor. Jim appeared around the barn, his face tight. "Miss Ward, get inside." "What's wrong?" "Just get inside, now." Elena's stomach dropped, but she didn't argue. She grabbed the laundry basket and hurried toward the house, glancing back to see a rider cresting the hill. Even from a distance, she recognized the horse. Thomas Garrett's bay mare. Her hand shook as she set the basket down in the kitchen. Through the window, she watched Thomas dismount. He looked the same, dark hair, stern face, but something about him seemed smaller now, diminished. Rowan emerged from the barn, wiping grease from his hands. He didn't hurry, didn't seem concerned, just walked over with that steady, unhurried gait and stopped a few feet from Thomas. Elena couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could see Thomas gesturing, his movements sharp and agitated. Rowan stood perfectly still, arms crossed, face blank. Then Thomas pointed toward the house, toward her. Ice flooded Elena's veins. Rowan said something short. Thomas's face went red. He said something back, louder this time. Elena caught the tail end of it through the open window. "My business what happens to her. Not anymore." Rowan's voice carried clear and cold. "You made that choice 3 months ago." "I'm allowed to change my mind." "About what?" "The engagement." Rowan's laugh was harsh. "Little late for that, don't you think?" Thomas stepped closer, jaw clenched. "Catherine left. Went back to Denver. Turns out she wasn't interested in ranch life after all." "That's not Miss Ward's problem. I know that. I'm not—" Thomas ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I just want to talk to her, make sure she's all right." "She's fine. I'd like to hear that from her." "No." The word was flat, final. Thomas's hands curled into fists. "You can't keep me from— I can do whatever the hell I want on my own land." Rowan's voice dropped lower, more dangerous. "And right now, I want you to get back on that horse and leave. This is between me and Elena. There is no you and Elena. There never was." Rowan took a step forward, and despite being roughly the same height, he somehow seemed to tower over Thomas. "You humiliated that woman in front of the whole town, treated her like garbage. You don't get to come back now and pretend you're concerned." "I made a mistake." "Yeah, you did. And she's moved on, so should you." Thomas glanced toward the house again, and for a moment his eyes met Elena's through the window. She didn't move, didn't breathe. "Tell her I'm sorry," Thomas said quietly. "Tell her yourself," Rowan said. "If you can find her in town. But you're not coming onto my property again, understood?" Thomas stood there for a long moment, shoulders sagging. Then he nodded, climbed back onto his horse, and rode away. Elena watched until he disappeared over the ridge. Her heart was hammering so hard she felt dizzy. The kitchen door opened. Rowan stepped inside, his expression carefully neutral. "You all right?" "Yes." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "What did he want?" "To talk to you." "Why?" "Catherine left him." Rowan crossed to the sink and washed his hands. "Apparently he's having regrets." Elena laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Regrets. Of course he is." "You want to talk to him?" "No." The answer came swift and certain. "I don't want anything to do with him." Rowan nodded, something like approval flickering across his face. "Good." He turned to leave, but Elena's voice stopped him. "Thank you for sending him away. You're under my employment. That makes you my responsibility." He paused at the door. "But even if you weren't, I still would have sent him packing. A man like that doesn't deserve a second chance." After he left, Elena stood in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter. Her hands were shaking again, but not from fear, from anger. From the sheer audacity of Thomas showing up here, expecting what? Forgiveness? Another chance? She'd meant what she said. She didn't want anything to do with him. But a small, treacherous part of her wondered what would have happened if she'd said yes. If she'd gone out there and listened to whatever apology he'd prepared. Would it have changed anything? No. The answer settled in her chest with absolute certainty. Nothing Thomas could say would undo what he'd done. and nothing he offered now could compare to what she'd found here. That realization should have brought relief. Instead, it brought a different kind of fear. Because what she'd found here, this routine, this place, these people, wasn't permanent. Couldn't be. She was still just the hired help. Still an outsider. Still one bad season or one disagreement away from being back where she started. She needed to remember that. 2 weeks later, Jim asked Elena to come into town with him for supplies. "Boss usually handles it," he said, loading empty crates into the wagon. "But he's dealing with a sick calf. Needs someone who can read the supply list and make sure we get the right stuff." Elena hesitated. She hadn't been back to town since that first terrible day. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not? You scared of those gossips?" Jim snorted. "Hell, half of them have probably forgotten about you by now." "I doubt that." "Well, even if they haven't, so what? You got nothing to be ashamed of." He gave her a look. "Besides, we need flour, and you're out of cinnamon. I heard you complaining about it yesterday." Elena bit her lip. He was right. She did need cinnamon, and a dozen other things she couldn't get at the ranch. "Fine, she said, "but we're not staying long." "Wouldn't dream of it." The ride into town took an hour. Elena spent most of it trying not to think about what waited at the other end. When the buildings finally came into view, her stomach knotted. Jim seemed to sense her tension. "You want me to handle the trading post alone?" "No." Elena straightened her spine. "I'm fine." She wasn't fine, but she was done running. The trading post looked exactly the same, peeling paint, dusty windows, the same bored woman behind the counter. She looked up when Elena walked in, and recognition flashed across her face. "Well," the woman said, "didn't expect to see you again. I need supplies." Elena handed over the list. The woman took it, scanning the items. "Working for Rowan Cross now, I heard." "I am." "How's that going?" "Fine." Elena kept her voice flat, offering nothing. The woman's mouth twitched, almost like she wanted to smile. "He's a hard man to work for, I'd imagine. He's fair." "Fair." The woman repeated the word slowly, then nodded. "Yeah, I suppose he is." She started pulling items from the shelves. "Heard Thomas Garrett came by the ranch a couple weeks back." Of course she had. Elena's jaw tightened. He did. Also heard Rowan sent him packing. He did that too. The woman set a bag of flour on the counter with a heavy thump. "Good. Thomas is an idiot. Always has been." She met Elena's eyes. "You're better off where you are." The words caught Elena off guard. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just stating facts." The woman finished gathering the supplies. "That'll be $4.30. Elena paid and helped carry the crates to the wagon. Jim was already loading fence posts, whistling tunelessly. "That wasn't so bad, was it?" he said. "I suppose not." But as they drove away, Elena caught sight of two women standing outside the hotel. They were staring at her, heads bent together, whispering. One of them was blonde. Catherine. Their eyes met for a brief second. Catherine's face was carefully blank, but something flickered there. Recognition, maybe. Or guilt. Elena looked away first. "You all right?" Jim asked. "Yes." She was surprised to find it was true. "I'm fine." The encounter with Catherine should have bothered her more, should have dredged up all that humiliation and anger. But instead, Elena just felt tired, and maybe a little bit sorry for the woman. Catherine had gotten exactly what she wanted, Thomas Garrett, and apparently it hadn't been enough. That night, Elena was finishing the dishes when Rowan came in through the back door. He looked exhausted, his shirt stained with something that might have been blood. "Is the calf all right?" she asked. "She will be. Lost her mother, but we got her feeding from a bottle." He slumped into a chair. "It'll be touch and go for a few days." Elena poured him coffee without asking. He took it with a nod of thanks. "Jim said you went into town today. We needed supplies." "How was it?" Elena shrugged. "Survivable." Rowan's mouth quirked slightly. "High praise." "I saw Catherine." His expression darkened. "Did she say anything?" "No. We just looked at each other. Elena sat down across from him. She seemed unhappy. Good. Rowan. What? She helped humiliate you. She deserves to be unhappy. He took a long drink of coffee. Besides, I heard she's already got her eye on the banker's son. She'll be fine. Elena studied him, the tired lines around his eyes, the tense set of his shoulders. You don't like many people, do you? I like plenty of people. Name 3. He paused, thinking. Jim, Miguel, you. The last word hung in the air between them. Elena's heart did something complicated. That's 3, Rowan continued, oblivious. And the boys, so that's 6, plus my horse, 7. Your horse doesn't count. Why not? She's better company than most humans. Elena laughed despite herself. That's sad. That's realistic. Rowan set down his cup. People are disappointing. Animals aren't. That's not true. Isn't it? Look at Thomas. Look at Catherine. Hell, look at half the people in town who treated you like dirt just because you got your heart broken. His voice was bitter. Animals don't do that. They're honest, loyal. They don't pretend to be something they're not. Elena absorbed this, trying to understand the man behind the words. Someone hurt you. Rowan's face closed off immediately. This isn't about me. Isn't it? No. He stood abruptly. I should check on the calf again. Rowan. But he was already gone, the door swinging shut behind him. Elena sat alone in the kitchen, her coffee growing cold. She'd pushed too far, crossed some invisible line. But she'd also seen something in his eyes before he left, something raw and wounded and carefully hidden. Rowan Cross had been hurt, badly, and whatever it was, he'd never fully recovered. The next morning, things were back to normal. Rowan was polite but distant at breakfast. The boys filled the silence with chatter about a poker game they'd lost spectacularly. Jim complained about his back. Elena served food and cleaned up and pretended her chest didn't ache every time Rowan carefully avoided looking at her. She was scrubbing a pot when Miguel appeared at her elbow. Miss Ward, can I ask you something? Of course. He glanced toward the door, making sure they were alone. You know anything about women? Elena blinked. I am a woman, Miguel. Right, yeah. He shifted his weight, looking miserable. There's this girl in town, and I think she might like me, but I'm not sure, and I don't want to make a fool of myself. Despite everything, Elena smiled. What makes you think she likes you? She smiles at me every time I see her, and last week she laughed at something I said, even though it wasn't that funny. He ran a hand through his hair. But maybe she's just being nice? What's her name? Maria. She works at the bakery. Elena remembered the bakery, a small shop near the church, run by a Mexican family. Have you talked to her? Besides whatever made her laugh? A little, mostly about bread. Miguel looked pained. I'm not good at talking to girls. Most men aren't. Elena dried her hands on her apron. Here's what you do. Next time you go into town, bring her something. Not flowers, that's too obvious. Something thoughtful. Does she like anything in particular? Miguel's face lit up. She mentioned she likes reading, said the town doesn't have enough books. Perfect. Find her a book. Doesn't have to be expensive, just something you think she'd enjoy. Elena paused. And when you give it to her, don't make a big speech. Just say you thought of her when you saw it. That's it? That's it. If she likes you, that'll be enough. And if she doesn't, at least you'll know. Miguel grinned. Thanks, Miss Ward, you're the best. He bounded off, leaving Elena shaking her head. Young love, she barely remembered what that felt like. That evening, she found a book on her bed, old leather-bound with gold lettering on the spine. Shakespeare's sonnets. There was no note, no explanation, but Elena knew exactly who'd left it. She opened to a random page, her hands trembling slightly. The words swam before her eyes, beautiful and incomprehensible. She'd never been much for poetry, but someone thought she might like it, had thought of her. That night, she fell asleep with the book on her nightstand, and for the first time in months, she didn't dream about Philadelphia. The trouble started on a Saturday. Elena was in the chicken coop gathering eggs when she heard shouting from the north pasture. She dropped the basket and ran. The boys were clustered near the fence line, all talking at once. Jim stood in the middle, his face dark with anger. "What happened?" Elena asked. "Fence is cut." Jim pointed to a section where the wire had been clearly severed. "And we're missing cattle, at least a dozen head." Elena's stomach dropped. "Stolen?" "Unless they learned to cut wire." Jim's voice was grim. "This is the third time this month." "Third time?" "We didn't want to worry you. Thought maybe it was just bad luck, but this?" He gestured at the clean cut. "This is deliberate." Rowan appeared on horseback, riding hard. He dismounted in one smooth motion and examined the fence without a word. Finally, he straightened. "Round up what you can find. I want to count by nightfall." "Yes, sir." Jim hesitated. "You think it's Garrett?" "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." Rowan's expression was stone. "Miss Ward, get back to the house." "I can help. Get back to the house." His tone left no room for argument. Elena watched them ride off, her chest tight with helpless frustration. She hated being sent away like a child, hated being protected. But she also understood. Out here, cattle theft was serious business. People had been killed over less. By evening, the men had recovered 8 of the missing cattle. 4 were still gone, and Rowan's mood was black as thunder. "Could be Garrett," Jim said over supper. "Could be the Hendersons. They've been eyeing your water rights for years." "Could be anyone." Rowan pushed food around his plate. "That's the problem." "We could set up watches," Jack suggested. "Rotate through the night. We're already short-handed. Can't afford to lose sleep, too." Rowan rubbed his face. "But we might not have a choice." Elena listened, saying nothing. An idea was forming in her mind. Dangerous? Probably stupid, but possibly necessary. After supper, she found Rowan in the barn, checking the horses. "I want to help," she said. He didn't look up. "You do help. Every day." "I mean with this, the cattle, the fence." Now he looked at her. "Absolutely not." "Why not?" "Because it's dangerous. Because you could get hurt. Because—" He stopped, jaw clenched. "Because I'm a woman? Because I don't want you in the line of fire if this turns into something worse." His voice was rough. "You're not a ranch hand, Elena. You're—" "What? The cook? The maid?" She stepped closer. "I'm part of this place too, and if someone's trying to destroy it, I have a right to help protect it. This isn't about rights." "Then what is it about?" Rowan stared at her, something fierce and frustrated burning in his eyes. "It's about keeping you safe." The words hit her like a physical blow. Elena's breath caught. "Why?" she whispered. "Because—" He stopped again, turned away. "Just trust me, please." Elena wanted to argue, wanted to push, but something in his voice stopped her. "Fine," she said quietly. "But if things get worse, I'm not sitting on the sidelines. I won't." Rowan nodded, still not looking at her. "Fair enough." Things got worse. 2 nights later, the barn caught fire. Elena woke to shouting and the smell of smoke. She tumbled out of bed, grabbed her robe, and ran outside. Flames licked up the side of the barn, bright orange against the black sky. The horses were screaming. The men were already there, forming a bucket line from the well. "Get the horses out!" Rowan was yelling. "Move!" Miguel and Jack ran into the barn. Elena started toward the well, but Jim caught her arm. "Too dangerous. Stay back." "I can help carry water." "Stay back." So she stood there, useless, while the men fought the fire. Smoke billowed thick and choking. The horses burst out of the barn, wild-eyed and terrified. Miguel emerged last, coughing hard. "That's all of them," he gasped. They fought for another hour before getting the fire under control. By the time it was out, half the barn was destroyed and everyone was black with soot. Rowan stood in front of the wreckage, chest heaving. His hands were blistered. His face was a mask of cold fury. "This wasn't an accident," Jim said. "No." Rowan's voice was deadly quiet. "It wasn't." "What do we do?" "We find whoever did this." Rowan turned to face them all. "And we make sure they never touch this place again." The next morning, Rowan rode into town. He came back 3 hours later with the sheriff, a heavy-set man named Porter who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Show me the fence," Porter said. They walked the property, examining the cut wire, the burned barn, the missing cattle. Porter took notes but didn't seem particularly concerned. "Could be drifters," he said. "Could be bad luck." "Bad luck doesn't cut wire." Rowan's patience was clearly wearing thin. "Maybe. Maybe not." Porter tucked his notebook away. "Look, I'll ask around town, see if anyone saw anything. But without proof, there's not much I can do." "What kind of proof do you need?" "The barn burned down." "Accidents happen, fires start. Unless you got a witness who saw someone set it. So you're saying someone has to catch them in the act?" Porter shifted uncomfortably. "I'm saying I need evidence before I can make accusations." After he left, Rowan was silent for a long time. "He's useless," Jim said finally. "He's scared." Rowan's expression was grim. "Whoever's doing this has pull. Porter doesn't want to step on the wrong toes." "So what do we do?" "We set a trap." Rowan looked at each of them in turn, "and we catch the bastards ourselves." That night, they made plans. Miguel and Jack would patrol the north pasture, Jim would watch the remaining barn, Ben would stay near the house, and Rowan would ride the perimeter, watching for anything suspicious. "What about me?" Elena asked. "You stay inside. Keep the doors locked." "Rowan." "Please, Elena." His eyes were tired, haunted. "Just this once, don't argue with me." So she didn't. She went inside, locked the doors, and waited. The night stretched endlessly. Elena tried to sleep but couldn't. Every sound made her jump. The wind, a coyote howling, the creak of settling wood. Around midnight, she heard hoofbeats. Elena went to the window, peering out into the darkness. A figure on horseback was approaching the house, but it was too dark to see who. She grabbed the rifle Rowan kept by the door. Her hands shook as she checked it was loaded. The hoofbeats stopped. A knock at the door. "Miss Ward? It's Ben. Don't shoot." Elena sagged with relief and opened the door. Ben stood there, hat in hand, looking sheepish. "Sorry to scare you. Boss wanted me to check you were all right." "I'm fine." She lowered the rifle. "Anything happening out there?" "Quiet so far. Too quiet, if you ask me." Ben glanced over his shoulder. "Feels like waiting for a storm." "I know what you mean." After he left, Elena went back to waiting. The rifle stayed close. Dawn came with no incident. The men returned one by one, tired and frustrated. "Nothing," Jim reported. "Not a damn thing." Rowan looked like he hadn't slept in days. "They're waiting, watching. Or maybe they're done," Jack suggested hopefully. "They're not done." Rowan's voice was flat. "The barn was a message. They want us scared." "Well, it's working," Ben muttered. That afternoon, Miguel rode back from town with news. He found Elena in the garden, pulling weeds. "Miss Ward, you need to hear this." "What is it?" "I was at the bakery, talking to Maria." His face was tight. "She said there's been talk about the boss." Elena's stomach dropped. "What kind of talk?" "People saying he's getting what he deserves, that he stole water rights from the Hendersons, that he drove another rancher out of business years ago." Miguel looked miserable. "They're saying he had it coming. That's ridiculous." "I know, but people are believing it, and the Hendersons are the ones spreading it." Elena stood, brushing dirt from her hands. "Does Rowan know?" "Not yet. I came straight here. We need to tell him." They found Rowan in what was left of the barn, surveying the damage. When Miguel repeated what Maria had said, Rowan's expression didn't change. "Let them talk. Boss, they're trying to turn the town against you." "Let them." Rowan's voice was hard. "I don't need the town's approval. I need to protect my land. But if no one's willing to help, then we'll handle it ourselves, like we always do." He looked at Miguel. "You did good getting this information, but don't let it distract you. Stay focused." After Miguel left, Elena stayed. "You're not worried about the rumors?" "Rumors can't burn down my barn." "No, but they can make sure no one cares when it happens." She crossed her arms. "People liked you better before I arrived." Rowan's head snapped up. "What?" "It's true, isn't it? This all started after Thomas came to the ranch, after he saw me here. The realization was settling cold in her gut. They think you're protecting me, choosing me over them. I am protecting you, and I don't give a damn what they think about it. Maybe you should. Why? So they'll like me better? Rowan laughed bitterly. I tried that once, tried playing by their rules, being the good neighbor, doing everything right. His face twisted. And they still turned on me the second it was convenient. What happened? For a long moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sighed, suddenly looking much older. I was married once, long time ago, Sarah. His voice was carefully controlled. She was from town, good family, everyone approved. He paused. Turned out she was sleeping with my business partner. They'd been planning to steal the ranch, sell it, and take off together. I found out the hard way. Elena's chest constricted. Rowan? The town knew. The whole damn town knew, and no one said a word to me. They watched it happen. Some of them even helped cover it up. His eyes were distant, lost in memory. When I finally caught them, when I threw her out and dissolved the partnership, suddenly I was the bad guy. Too harsh, too unforgiving, should have given her another chance. That's insane. That's people. Rowan's smile was bitter. So no, Elena, I don't care what they think. I stopped caring a long time ago. She understood now, the distance he kept, the walls he'd built, the careful way he lived, never letting anyone too close. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Don't be. It taught me something important. He met her eyes. The only people worth trusting are the ones who prove it. Actions, not words. And you've proven it. Every day. That's worth more than the whole town's approval. The words settled warm in Elena's chest, dangerous and terrifying and wonderful all at once. We'll figure this out, she said. Together. Rowan nodded slowly. Together. That night, the attack came. Elena was in the kitchen when she heard the gunshot. Then another, then shouting. She grabbed the rifle and ran outside. Chaos. Horses screaming, men yelling, the sharp crack of more gunshots. In the darkness, she could see figures moving near the pasture fence. Rowan was already mounted, rifle in hand. Stay in the house! But Elena had promised she wouldn't sit on the sidelines. She ran toward the barn where Jim was taking cover, firing toward the fence line. What the hell are you doing? Jim yelled. Helping! Another shot rang out, close enough that Elena heard the bullet whine past. Jim yanked her down behind a water trough. You trying to get killed? How many are there? 3, maybe 4. Can't tell in the dark. He fired again. They're trying to scatter the cattle. Elena peered over the trough. She could see shadowy figures on horseback, driving the cattle toward a gap in the fence. Rowan was riding hard to cut them off. One of the figures turned and fired at Rowan. He ducked low in the saddle, still coming. Elena didn't think. She raised the rifle, aimed for the ground near the shooter's horse, and fired. The recoil nearly knocked her over. The shot went wide, but it was close enough to spook the horse. The animal reared, throwing off the rider's aim. Nice shot, Jim muttered. Rowan reached the cattle, turning them back. Miguel appeared from the other side, firing warning shots. The intruders hesitated, realizing they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Then they ran. Rowan pursued for about 100 yards before pulling up. Chasing them in the dark was too dangerous. By the time he rode back, Elena was shaking so hard she could barely stand. Jim had to take the rifle from her hands. Rowan dismounted, his face a thundercloud. I told you to stay inside. I know. You could have been killed. But I wasn't. That's not the point. He grabbed her shoulders, and for a second she thought he might shake her. Don't you understand? If something happened to you... He stopped abruptly, jaw clenched, and let her go. I was trying to help, Elena said quietly. I know. The anger drained from his face, leaving only exhaustion. I know you were. Jim cleared his throat. I'll check on the cattle. After he left, Rowan and Elena stood in the dark, the adrenaline slowly fading. You're a decent shot, Rowan said finally. My father taught me, back in Philadelphia. Remind me to thank him if I ever meet him. Elena smiled despite herself. He'd like you. Would he? He liked stubborn men who thought they knew everything. Rowan's mouth twitched. Is that what I am? Among other things. They walked back to the house together. The night air was cold now, raising goosebumps on Elena's arms. Rowan noticed and draped his coat over her shoulders without a word. It smelled like leather and smoke and him. Tomorrow, we go back to the sheriff, Rowan said. This was an attempted robbery. He can't ignore that. Do you really think he'll help? He'll have to. We've got witnesses now. Proof. Rowan's voice hardened. And if he won't, I'll handle it myself. Elena believed him. The question was whether the law would step in before Rowan Cross took matters into his own hands, because she was starting to realize that Rowan wasn't just a hard man. He was a dangerous one when pushed, and someone had been pushing very, very hard. Sheriff Porter showed up at noon the next day, looking even less enthusiastic than before. He sat at the kitchen table while Rowan, Jim, and Miguel recounted the previous night's attack. Elena served coffee and listened from the doorway. So you're saying 4 armed men tried to steal your cattle, Porter said slowly, like he was talking to a child. That's exactly what I'm saying. Rowan's voice was tight. We all saw them. Elena here even fired a shot. Porter's gaze swung to her. That true, Miss Ward? Yes, sir. Hit anyone? No. I was aiming to scare the horse. Porter grunted and made a note. Anyone get a good look at these men? Recognize them? Too dark, Jim said, but one of them was riding a paint horse, black and white. Can't be too many of those around here. Henderson's got a paint, Miguel added. Porter's expression soured. Now hold on. Don't go making accusations without proof. The proof is the damn horse, Rowan snapped. And the cut fences, and the burned barn. How much more do you need? I need witnesses who can identify the men, not just their horses. Porter closed his notebook with a decisive snap. Look, I'll talk to the Hendersons. Ask if they saw anything suspicious. But unless you can prove they were involved, of course they won't admit it. Rowan stood abruptly, the chair scraping loud against the floor. You know that as well as I do. Then get me real evidence. Until then, my hands are tied. After Porter left, Rowan stood on the porch, staring out at the scorched remains of the barn. His hands gripped the railing so hard, his knuckles went white. He's not going to help, Elena said quietly. No, he's not. So what do we do? Rowan didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was low and dangerous. We make them think twice about coming back. That afternoon, Rowan and the boys worked on reinforcing the fences. They added extra wire, built new supports, and set up a bell system that would ring if anyone tried to cut through again. Elena watched from the garden, her hands busy with weeding but her mind elsewhere. She'd seen the look in Rowan's eyes. He was done waiting, done playing by rules that only applied to him, and that scared her more than the Midnight Riders. Miguel found her an hour later, his face flushed with excitement. Miss Ward, I did it. I gave Maria the book. Despite everything, Elena smiled. How did she react? She loved it, said it was the nicest thing anyone's done for her in months. He was practically glowing. And then she asked if I'd like to walk with her after church on Sunday. That's wonderful, Miguel. I couldn't have done it without your help. He hesitated. There's something else. Maria said her brother saw something the night of the barn fire. Elena's attention sharpened. What did he see? 3 men on horses riding away from this direction. One of them was on a paint. Miguel lowered his voice. He recognized 2 of them, Frank Henderson and his cousin, Dale. Did he tell the sheriff? He's scared. The Hendersons have a lot of pull in town. If he speaks up, it could cause trouble for his family. Elena understood. The Hendersons owned the 2nd largest ranch in the territory. They had money, influence, and no qualms about using either. Does Rowan know? Not yet. I wanted to tell you first. Tell me what? Rowan's voice came from behind them. Miguel jumped, but he repeated what Maria's brother had seen. Rowan's expression grew darker with every word. Can the boy testify? He asked when Miguel finished. I don't think so. He's terrified. Then it's still hearsay. Porter won't act on it. But we know it was them, Miguel protested. Knowing and proving are different things. Rowan rubbed his face. Thank Maria for the information, and tell her to have her brother stay quiet. I don't want the Hendersons going after his family, too. After Miguel left, Elena touched Rowan's arm. What are you planning? Nothing you need to worry about. Rowan. He turned to face her fully. I'm going to the Henderson ranch tomorrow. Going to have a conversation with Frank. That's a terrible idea. Probably, but I'm done sitting here waiting for them to make the next move. His jaw was set. They need to understand there are consequences. You'll just make things worse. They can't get much worse. Elena wanted to argue, but she could see it wouldn't do any good. Rowan had made up his mind. The best she could do was make sure he didn't go alone. Then I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. You don't get to tell me what to do. When it comes to your safety, yes, I do. I work for you, Rowan. That doesn't make me your property. Elena's voice was steel. If you're riding into a potential ambush, you need someone watching your back. Jim's too old. The boys are too young. That leaves me. You can barely shoot straight. I hit what I was aiming at last night. They glared at each other. Finally, Rowan let out a long breath. Fine. But you stay behind me, and if I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Understood. She was lying. If things went bad, she had no intention of running. But Rowan didn't need to know that yet. They rode out at dawn. The Henderson Ranch was 15 miles east, across a stretch of prairie that seemed to go on forever. Elena sat her horse better than she had 3 months ago. All that laundry hauling had built up her arm strength. But she was still sore by the time the Henderson buildings came into view. The ranch was bigger than Rowan's, with a sprawling main house and multiple outbuildings. Cattle dotted the landscape, fat and healthy. Money practically dripped from every fence post. Stay close, Rowan said as they approached. 2 men emerged from the barn as they rode up. One was thick-shouldered and balding, maybe 50. The other was younger, lean, and mean-looking. Both wore guns on their hips. Well, the older man said. Rowan Cross. Didn't expect to see you here. Frank. Rowan's voice was neutral. He nodded to the younger man. Dale. What brings you out our way? Frank's smile didn't reach his eyes. Finally ready to sell that land? Not even close. I'm here about the cattle theft. Frank's expression didn't change. What theft would that be? The one where your men cut my fence and tried to drive off my herd, night before last. That's so. Frank tilted his head. You got proof of that? I've got witnesses who saw a paint horse, saw men who looked a lot like your boys here. Dale stepped forward, hand drifting toward his gun. You calling us thieves? I'm saying someone cut my fence, burned my barn, and tried to steal my cattle. And all signs point to this ranch. Signs can point anywhere. Frank's smile widened. Doesn't mean they're accurate. I'm giving you one warning, Rowan said, his voice dropping lower. Stay off my land. Touch my property again and I won't go to the sheriff. I'll come straight here. That a threat? That's a promise. The tension crackled like lightning about to strike. Elena's hand moved slowly toward the rifle in her saddle holster, trying not to draw attention. Frank noticed anyway. His gaze slid to her for the first time. Who's this? Your new wife? My employee. And she's none of your concern. Employee. Frank laughed. That what we're calling it now? Heard you took in Thomas Garrett's cast-off. Guess you'll take anyone's leftovers. Elena felt the words like a slap, but she kept her face blank. Rowan, however, went very still. Apologize, he said quietly. For what? Speaking the truth? Apologize to Miss Ward. Now. Frank's smile turned ugly. Or what? You'll shoot me? In front of witnesses? He gestured to Dale and 2 other men who'd appeared from the barn. I don't think so. Rowan dismounted in one fluid motion. Elena's heart lurched into her throat. Rowan, don't! But he was already striding toward Frank, his whole body coiled tight with barely controlled rage. Dale moved to intercept, but Rowan caught him with a right hook that sent the younger man sprawling. Frank's hand went to his gun. Elena drew her rifle without thinking and pointed it straight at Frank's chest. Don't! Everyone froze. Frank looked at her, genuinely surprised. You really going to shoot me, girl? If you draw that gun, yes. Her voice shook, but her hands were steady. Step away from Rowan. You're making a big mistake. Probably, but I'm still making it. For a long, terrible moment, nobody moved. Then Frank slowly raised his hands away from his gun. This isn't over, he said to Rowan. No, it's not. Rowan backed toward his horse, never taking his eyes off Frank. But the next move is yours. Choose wisely. He mounted up. Elena kept the rifle trained on Frank until Rowan was settled, then backed her own horse away. They rode off at a steady walk, not running, refusing to show fear. Only when they were out of sight of the ranch did Elena lower the rifle. Her hands started shaking then, so badly she nearly dropped it. You all right? Rowan asked. No, I just pointed a gun at a man. I'm very much not all right. You did good. I could have gotten us both killed. You didn't, though. He glanced at her, something like respect in his eyes. You held your ground. Not many people would have done that. Elena didn't feel brave. She felt sick, but she nodded, accepting the words. They rode in silence for a while. Then Elena said, He's going to retaliate. I know. We need to be ready. We will be. But Elena wasn't sure ready was enough. Frank Henderson had money, men, and connections. They had determination and stubbornness. It didn't feel like an even fight. When they got back to the ranch, Jim took one look at their faces and cursed. What happened? We made things worse, Elena said. About what I expected. Jim sighed. Boss, we need to talk strategy. They gathered in the kitchen, Rowan, Jim, Miguel, Jack, and Ben. Elena made coffee and listened while they planned. We need to patrol in pairs, Jim said. No one goes out alone, not even to check fences. We should also reach out to the other ranchers, Jack suggested. See if anyone else has had trouble with the Hendersons. Good idea. Miguel, you handle that. You're good with people. Rowan drummed his fingers on the table. We also need to move the cattle closer to the main buildings. Easier to defend. That's a lot of work, Ben said. Then we better get started. They spent the next 3 days reorganizing the entire ranch, moving cattle, reinforcing fences, setting up watch rotations. Elena cooked triple portions to keep everyone fed. At night, she fell into bed exhausted, too tired even to think. On the 4th day, Miguel returned from town with news. The Johnsons had cattle go missing last month. So did the Petersons. Both blamed it on drifters, but now they're wondering. He paused. And I talked to Maria's brother. He's willing to testify if we can guarantee his family's safety. We can't guarantee that, Rowan said flatly. Henderson has too much reach. But if we had multiple witnesses, still wouldn't be enough. Porter's in Henderson's pocket. He won't move against him without ironclad proof. Elena had been quiet, but now she spoke up. What if we catch them in the act? Everyone turned to look at her. Set a trap, she continued. Make them think we're vulnerable. When they come, and they will come, we'll be ready, with witnesses and evidence they can't deny. That's risky, Jim said. Everything's risky right now. Elena met Rowan's eyes. But at least this way, we control the situation. Rowan considered it. What kind of trap? Move some cattle to the north pasture, the one farthest from the house. Make it look like we're spread too thin. Elena was thinking out loud now. Then we hide nearby. When they show up, we catch them red-handed. And if they bring more men than we can handle, we bring help. The Johnsons, the Petersons, anyone who's been hit by Henderson. She leaned forward. This isn't just about your ranch anymore. It's about stopping him before he controls the whole territory. Silence fell. Then Jim started to smile. It could work. It's insane, Rowan said, but he was smiling too, just a little. We'd need perfect timing, coordination. I can get the other ranchers, Miguel said. Give me 2 days. Do it. Rowan looked around the table. We get one shot at this. If we mess it up, Henderson wins. Everyone understand that? They all nodded. The planning took a week. Miguel rode out to every ranch within a 20-mile radius, explaining the situation. Most were skeptical at first, but when they heard about the paint horse, about Frank Henderson's threats, they started listening. In the end, 7 ranchers agreed to help. They'd hide in the north pasture with Rowan and his men, waiting for Henderson to make his move. The bait was simple: 50 head of cattle, far from the main buildings, guarded by only Ben and Jack. It would look like Rowan had overextended himself. Elena hated the plan, hated that it put the boys in danger, but she also knew it was their best chance. The night before the trap was set, she found Rowan on the porch, staring at the stars. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Too much on my mind." Elena sat beside him. "We don't have to do this. We could just fortify the ranch. Wait them out." "Henderson won't stop. Not until he gets what he wants." Rowan's voice was tired. "And what he wants is this land. Always has." "Why?" "Water rights. There's a spring on my property that feeds into the creek. If he controls it, he controls half the water in the valley." Rowan paused. "He offered to buy me out twice. When I refused, he tried going through the courts. When that didn't work, he got creative." "The cattle theft, the fire." "Yeah. He figures if he makes life hard enough, I'll give up and sell." Will you?" Rowan looked at her, his gray eyes catching the moonlight. "Would you? If you were me?" Elena thought about it. Thought about the train platform, about Thomas's rejection, about every moment since when she could have given up, could have accepted the easy way out. "No," she said. "I wouldn't." "Then you have your answer." They sat in silence for a while. Then Rowan spoke again, quieter now. "If things go bad tomorrow, they won't. But if they do, I need you to promise me something." Elena's chest tightened. "What?" "Promise me you'll run. Get on a horse and ride straight to town. Don't look back." "Rowan, promise me, Elena." She wanted to lie, wanted to promise and then break that promise the second it mattered. But something in his face stopped her. "I promise I'll do whatever it takes to survive," she said carefully. "That's the best I can give you." Rowan studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "I suppose that'll have to do." He stood to go inside, but Elena caught his hand. He froze. "Thank you," she said, "for everything, for taking me in, for giving me a chance, for—" Her voice cracked. "For making me feel like I belong somewhere again." Rowan's expression shifted, something raw and vulnerable breaking through. He squeezed her hand once, gently. "You do belong here. Don't ever doubt that." Then he was gone, disappearing into the house before she could respond. Elena sat alone on the porch, her hand still warm from his touch, and tried not to think about what tomorrow might bring. The trap was set at dusk. The cattle were moved to the north pasture, lowing and shifting nervously. Ben and Jack sat by a small fire, visible from the ridge, playing cards and pretending to be alone. Everyone else was hidden in the brush: Rowan, Jim, Miguel, and the 7 ranchers who'd agreed to help. Elena was supposed to stay at the house, but she'd snuck out and hidden herself in a rocky outcropping with a clear view of the pasture. She'd brought the rifle. Hours passed. The fire burned low. Elena's legs cramped from crouching, but she didn't move. Then, around midnight, she heard it. Hoofbeats. Multiple horses, approaching from the east. 6 riders emerged from the darkness. Even from a distance, Elena could see the paint horse in front. Frank Henderson had taken the bait. The riders spread out, circling the herd. One of them called out to Ben and Jack. "You boys should head home. This doesn't concern you." Ben stood, his hand near his gun. "These cattle aren't yours." "They will be." The rider, Dale Henderson, laughed. "You really want to die for Rowan Cross? We're not going anywhere." Dale drew his gun. "That's a mistake." "Drop it!" Rowan's voice rang out from the darkness. All 6 riders spun, hands going to weapons. Then the other ranchers emerged from hiding, rifles raised. The Henderson men were surrounded. Frank's face went pale in the moonlight. "This is a setup." "Smart man." Rowan stepped forward, his rifle steady. "Now get off your horses, slow." For a second, Elena thought Frank might try to shoot his way out. His hand twitched toward his gun. Then a rifle cracked. Not Rowan's, but one of the other ranchers. The bullet hit the ground near Frank's horse, making the animal rear. "Next one's for you," the rancher called out. "Your choice." Frank's shoulders sagged. He dismounted. His men followed suit, hands raised. Jim and Miguel moved in, taking their weapons. Rowan kept his rifle trained on Frank the entire time. "You made a big mistake coming here," Frank said. "Funny. I was about to say the same thing to you." Rowan nodded to Jim. "Tie them up. Someone ride for the sheriff." "Porter won't do anything," Frank sneered. "You know that." "Maybe not. But with a dozen witnesses and you caught red-handed, even he can't ignore this." Rowan's smile was cold. "Besides, I sent word to the territorial marshal yesterday. He should be arriving tomorrow." Frank's face went from pale to ashen. "You bastard." "You taught me well." Miguel rode off toward town. The rest of them secured the Henderson men and waited. Elena stayed hidden, her heart still racing. Part of her couldn't believe the plan had actually worked. Then she heard another sound, more hoofbeats, coming fast from the west. "Rowan!" she shouted. "Behind you!" 3 more riders burst into the clearing, guns blazing. One of the ranchers went down with a cry. Another dove for cover. Chaos erupted. Elena raised her rifle and fired at the nearest rider, missing but making him swerve. Rowan was shouting orders, returning fire. Someone screamed. One of the new riders was heading straight for Ben and Jack. Elena didn't think. She fired again, and this time she didn't miss. The bullet caught the rider in the shoulder, spinning him out of the saddle. The other 2 riders saw they were outnumbered and tried to retreat. Jim and one of the ranchers pursued on horseback, firing as they went. When the dust settled, Frank Henderson and 5 of his men were captured. 2 had escaped. One rancher was wounded but alive, and Elena was standing in the open, rifle still raised, shaking like a leaf. Rowan reached her first. "Are you all right?" "I shot someone." Her voice sounded far away. "I actually shot someone." "You saved Ben's life." Rowan gently took the rifle from her hands. "You did what you had to do." Elena looked at the man she'd shot. He was conscious, clutching his shoulder, cursing steadily. Not dead, just hurt. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt numb. "Come on." Rowan guided her away from the scene. "Let's get you back to the house." "I'm fine." "No, you're not. And that's all right." His voice was gentle. "You don't have to be fine right now." But Elena pulled away from him. "I'm not going back to the house. Not until this is finished." She walked over to Frank Henderson, who was tied up and glaring at everyone. Up close, he looked older, tired, almost pathetic. "Why?" Elena asked. "Why go after Rowan? Why all of this?" Frank spat at her feet. "You wouldn't understand. Try me. This land was supposed to be mine. My father had a claim, but Cross's father bought it out from under him, stole it." Frank's face twisted with old bitterness. "Everything the Crosses have should have been ours." "So you became exactly what you hate," Elena said quietly. "A thief. Someone who takes what doesn't belong to them." Frank said nothing. Elena turned away, disgusted. Behind her, she heard the sound of approaching horses. Sheriff Porter arrived with the territorial marshal, a hard-faced man named Dixon, who took one look at the scene and started taking charge. "Someone tell me what happened here." Rowan explained everything. Dixon listened, examined the captured men, talked to the witnesses. When he was done, he nodded slowly. "Mr. Henderson, you're under arrest for cattle theft, arson, and attempted murder." Dixon gestured to his deputies. "Load them up." "This won't stick," Frank said. "I've got lawyers, connections." "Maybe, but you'll be tried in territorial court, not local." Dixon's smile was thin. "And I don't care who you know. Evidence is evidence." As they loaded Frank and his men full into a wagon, Porter stood off to the side, looking sick. He'd bet on the wrong side, and everyone knew it. Rowan walked over to him. "You're a coward, Porter." "I was trying to keep the peace." "No, you were trying to keep yourself comfortable." Rowan's voice was hard. "People like you are worse than Frank. At least he was honest about being crooked." Porter opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing he could say. Dawn was breaking by the time everything was settled. The wounded rancher was loaded into a wagon and taken to town for the doctor. The others dispersed, promising to testify when the trial came. Elena, Rowan, and the boys rode back to the ranch in silence. The adrenaline had faded, leaving only exhaustion. When they reached the house, Jim immediately went to check on the horses. Miguel and the others stumbled to their rooms. Elena headed for the kitchen, needing to do something normal, something that made sense. She was putting coffee on when Rowan found her. "You should rest. I need to keep moving. If I stop..." Her voice broke. "If I stop, I'll fall apart." Rowan crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. Elena stiffened, then collapsed against him, all the fear and shock and adrenaline finally breaking through. She cried into his chest while he held her, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring words she couldn't quite hear. It didn't matter. What mattered was that he was solid and warm and alive, and so was she. When the tears finally stopped, Elena pulled back, embarrassed. "Sorry, I don't usually..." "Don't apologize." Rowan's voice was rough. "You've earned the right to fall apart." "So have you." He smiled slightly. "Maybe later, when all this is really over." Elena wiped her face. "Do you think Frank will go to prison? With Dixon handling it?" "Yeah, I do." Rowan paused. "It'll be a scandal. The Hendersons have been powerful for a long time. This will shake things up." "Good. Maybe it'll make people think twice before pulling this kind of thing again." "Maybe." They stood there in the kitchen, coffee brewing, dawn light creeping through the windows. Everything felt surreal, like the whole night had been a fever dream. "Thank you," Rowan said quietly, "for not running, for staying. I promised I'd do whatever it took to survive. Turns out staying was part of that." Elena met his eyes. "Besides, I'm part of this place now. I'm not giving it up without a fight." Something shifted in Rowan's expression, something warm and wondering. "No, I don't suppose you would." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. Elena's breath caught. "Elena..." Whatever he was about to say was interrupted by Miguel bursting into the kitchen. "Boss, Miss Ward! You need to see this!" They followed him outside. The sun was fully up now, painting the sky gold and pink, and riding up the road toward the ranch was a group of people, townspeople. Elena's stomach dropped. "What do they want?" "I don't know," Rowan said, but his hand moved to his gun. The group stopped in front of the house. Elena recognized some of them, the woman from the general store, the baker, a few others. They looked nervous, uncertain. The baker stepped forward. "Mr. Cross, Miss Ward, we heard what happened last night." "Word travels fast," Rowan said carefully. "It does. And we wanted to come and say..." The baker hesitated, then pushed forward. "We wanted to say we're sorry for not standing up to Henderson sooner, for letting him bully people." The woman from the general store nodded. "We knew something wasn't right, but it was easier to look the other way." "We're here to help," another man added. "If you need to rebuild the barn or fix fences or anything else, we'll do it. Free of charge." Elena stared at them, stunned. Rowan looked equally surprised. "You don't have to do that," he said. "We know, but we want to." The baker's expression was earnest. "You stood up to Frank when no one else would. That takes courage, and we should have been standing with you from the start." Rowan was quiet for a long moment, then he nodded. "All right, we could use the help. Thank you." The townspeople smiled, relieved. They started unloading tools from their wagons, organizing themselves without being asked. Elena found the woman from the general store. "Why now? What changed?" The woman looked uncomfortable. "Honestly, we were scared. Frank had power, but once we saw you and Mr. Cross weren't backing down, even when things got dangerous..." She paused. "It made us ashamed of ourselves. Made us realize we'd been cowards." "You're here now," Elena said. "That's what matters." The woman smiled slightly. "You've changed since you arrived. When I first met you, you looked like you wanted to disappear. Now you look like you could take on the world." Elena thought about that, about the woman who'd stepped off the train 6 months ago, broken and humiliated. She felt like a completely different person now. "This place changes you," she said, "if you let it." By midday, the barn reconstruction was underway. Men sawed and hammered while women organized supplies and cooked food. Children ran between the adults, playing and getting underfoot. It felt like a celebration, like the whole town had exhaled a breath they'd been holding for years. Elena worked alongside everyone else, her exhaustion forgotten. At one point, she looked up and saw Rowan watching her from across the yard. When their eyes met, he smiled. A real smile. Not the grim half-smiles she'd seen before, but something genuine and unguarded. Elena smiled back, her chest warm. Maybe this was what home felt like. Not a place, but a collection of moments, of people who chose to stay when things got hard. She'd found that here. Against all odds, against every expectation, she'd found exactly what she'd been looking for, and she wasn't letting it go. The barn raising took 3 days. Elena had never seen anything like it, the way the whole town came together, working without complaint, sharing meals and stories and laughter. It was as if everyone had been waiting for permission to be decent to each other again, and Frank Henderson's arrest had finally given them that. On the third evening, when the new barn stood complete and sturdy, someone brought out a fiddle. Music filled the air, bright and cheerful, and people started dancing in the yard. Elena was washing dishes inside when Maria found her. "Miss Ward, you should come outside. Everyone's asking for you. I'm almost done here." "The dishes can wait." Maria smiled. "Besides, Miguel won't stop talking about how you taught him to talk to me. I wanted to thank you properly." Elena dried her hands, studying the young woman. Maria was pretty, with dark eyes and an easy smile. More importantly, she looked at Miguel like he hung the moon. "You make him happy," Elena said. "That's thanks enough." "He makes me happy too, though he's terrible at dancing." Maria laughed. "You should see him. He steps on my feet every other turn." They walked outside together. The yard was full of people, ranchers and their families, townspeople, even a few she didn't recognize. Rowan stood near the new barn, talking with some of the men who'd helped build it. He looked more relaxed than Elena had seen him in months. Jim appeared at her elbow with a cup of punch. "Quite the party." "It is." Elena took the cup. "How's your back holding up?" "Complaining, but I'll live." He gestured toward the dancers. "You planning to join them?" "I don't dance." "Everyone dances. You just need the right partner." Jim's eyes twinkled. "And I think I see one looking this way." Elena followed his gaze and found Rowan watching her. When their eyes met, he excused himself from his conversation and walked over. "Miss Ward," he said formally, "would you do me the honor?" Elena's heart skipped. "I told you, I don't dance." "Neither do I. We'll figure it out together." He offered his hand. She took it. Rowan led her into the center of the yard where several couples were already swaying to the music. He placed one hand on her waist, held her other hand in his, and they began to move. Elena stepped on his foot almost immediately. "Sorry. Don't apologize. I warned you I don't dance." Rowan's mouth quirked. "Though you're still better than Miguel." "I heard that," Miguel called from across the yard. They laughed, and Elena felt some of her nervousness ease. She focused on following Rowan's lead, on the warmth of his hand at her waist, on the way the lamplight caught in his gray eyes. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For this. For everything. You keep thanking me. I keep telling you it's not necessary." "It is, though. You gave me a chance when no one else would. You trusted me. You—" She paused, trying to find the right words. "You made me believe in myself again." Rowan's expression softened. "You did that yourself. I just gave you a place to do it. Still, I wouldn't be here without you. And I wouldn't be here without you." His voice was low, meant only for her. "You changed this place, Elena. Changed me. Made everything better. Just by being here." Her breath caught. They'd stopped dancing without realizing it, just standing there in the middle of the yard while people swirled around them. "Rowan!" But before she could finish, someone bumped into them, laughing and apologizing. The moment broke. They stepped apart, suddenly aware of all the eyes watching. "I should check on the food," Elena said, flustered. "Right. And I need to—" Rowan gestured vaguely toward nothing in particular. They separated, both moving too quickly, both pretending the moment hadn't happened. But it had. And Elena knew neither of them would forget it. The party wound down around midnight. People drifted home, calling their thanks and promises to visit soon. Elena cleaned up the yard with Maria's help while the boys put out the lanterns. When everything was finally quiet, she found herself alone on the porch again. It had become her spot, this weathered porch with its view of the endless prairie, a place to think, to breathe. Can't sleep again? Elena turned to find Rowan in the doorway. He'd changed out of his good shirt into something more comfortable. Just thinking, about everything. How different things are now compared to 6 months ago. She looked out at the darkness. When I stepped off that train, I thought my life was over, thought I'd made the biggest mistake imaginable. And now I think it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Elena smiled slightly, though I wouldn't have believed that then. Rowan stepped out onto the porch, standing close enough that she could feel his warmth. Thomas Garrett is an idiot. You've mentioned that before. It bears repeating. He was quiet for a moment. I saw him in town last week. He asked about you. Elena's stomach tightened. What did you tell him? That you were none of his business. Same as always. Rowan paused. He looked miserable. Catherine left him for the banker's son, like I predicted. Now he's alone in that big house, realizing what he threw away. Good. You don't mean that? Elena considered it. You're right, I don't. I don't wish him happiness, but I don't wish him misery either. I just wish he'd disappear from my thoughts entirely. Give it time. Eventually he will. Is that what happened with Sarah? She disappeared from your thoughts? Rowan's jaw tightened. Elena had pushed again, ventured into territory he kept locked tight. She expected him to shut down like he always did. Instead, he surprised her. No, she's still there sometimes, usually when I'm reminded that people can't be trusted. He leaned against the railing. But she doesn't hurt anymore. That's something. What would you do if you saw her again? I did see her, about 5 years ago. She was in Denver with her new husband, not the man she left me for, someone else. Third marriage, I heard. Rowan's voice was distant. She tried to talk to me. Apologize. I walked away. Do you regret that? No. Some people don't deserve forgiveness, and some apologies come too late to matter. He looked at Elena. But I also learned that holding on to anger just poisons you from the inside, so I let it go. Not for her sake, for mine. Elena understood that. She'd been angry at Thomas for months, letting it fuel her, drive her. But somewhere along the way, the anger had faded. Not because he deserved forgiveness, but because she deserved peace. I'm glad you told me, she said. Yeah, well, you seem to have a talent for getting me to talk about things I don't talk about. Rowan's tone was wry. It's annoying. I'll try to be more annoying then. He laughed, a real laugh that transformed his face. Elena felt something warm unfurl in her chest. They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the stars. After a while, Rowan spoke again. The trial's in 2 weeks. Dixon wants us both to testify. Both of us? You shot one of Henderson's men. That makes you a witness. He glanced at her. You up for it? Elena thought about facing Frank Henderson again, about reliving that night in front of a courtroom full of strangers. Her stomach churned, but she'd faced worse, and she wouldn't back down now. I'm up for it. Good, because I need you there. Rowan's voice was quiet. I need to know you're beside me when I face him. The words settled between them, heavy with meaning. Elena looked at him and saw not the hard, distant rancher she'd met 6 months ago, but someone vulnerable, someone who'd been hurt and learned to hide it, someone who was choosing, despite everything, to trust her. I'll be there, she promised, however you need me. Rowan nodded, something easing in his shoulders. Thank you. When Elena finally went to bed that night, she lay awake thinking about the way Rowan had looked at her, the way his hand had felt at her waist during the dance, the way he'd opened up, just a little, letting her see the wounds he usually kept hidden. She was falling for him. Had been for a while, probably. But admitting it, even to herself, felt dangerous. Because what if she was reading this wrong? What if he just saw her as an employee, a friend at best? What if she risked everything and ended up humiliated again? The fear was real, paralyzing. But so was the possibility that he might feel the same way. Elena fell asleep with that thought and dreamed of dancing under the stars. The 2 weeks before the trial passed in a strange mix of normal routine and mounting tension. The ranch work continued, cattle to tend, fences to mend, endless chores that didn't care about legal proceedings. But underneath it all was the knowledge that soon they'd have to face Frank Henderson again. Miguel and Maria were officially courting now, which provided some welcome distraction. Miguel was unbearable, grinning at everything and walking around like he'd discovered gold. "He's going to propose," Jack said one morning, watching Miguel ride off toward town. "Mark my words." "They've only been courting 2 weeks," Ben protested. "Doesn't matter. Look at him. Man's already planning the wedding." Jim just shook his head, amused. "Young love makes people stupid." Elena, overhearing this while hanging laundry, couldn't help but smile. Love did make people stupid. She was living proof, because she was definitely stupid about Rowan Cross. She'd started noticing things she shouldn't, the way his hands looked when he worked with leather, the rare smile that transformed his whole face, the protective way he positioned himself between her and any potential threat, probably without even realizing it. It was maddening and wonderful and terrifying. One afternoon, she was in the garden when she heard a horse approaching. She looked up to see Thomas Garrett riding toward the house. Elena's stomach dropped. She glanced toward the barn, hoping Rowan was nearby, but he'd ridden out to check the north pasture. Thomas dismounted, removing his hat. He looked thinner than she remembered. Older. "Elena, Miss Ward, He fumbled with the hat brim. "I was hoping we could talk. I have nothing to say to you. I know you don't, but I have things I need to say to you. Please, just 5 minutes." Every instinct told her to refuse, to walk away like Rowan had walked away from Sarah. But curiosity won out, along with a small, spiteful part of her that wanted to hear him grovel. 5 minutes, she said. "Then you leave." Thomas nodded. "I was wrong about everything. I should never have rejected you at the station, should never have treated you the way I did." The words came in a rush, rehearsed. "Catherine, she wasn't what I thought. And I realized too late that you were exactly what I needed." Elena waited. When he didn't continue, she raised an eyebrow. "Is that it?" "I want another chance. I know I don't deserve it, but you're right. You don't deserve it." Elena's voice was cold. "And you're not getting it. Please, I'm asking you to reconsider. We could still what? Get married? Build a life together?" Elena laughed, sharp and bitter. "Thomas, I wouldn't marry you if you were the last man in Montana. You humiliated me, destroyed me, and now you show up 6 months later expecting me to just forgive and forget? I made a mistake. You made a choice. And I made mine. I chose to move forward, to build something real here." She gestured at the ranch. "You don't get to come back now and ruin that." Thomas's face flushed. "You can't be happy here. Working as a servant, living in the middle of nowhere with a man who barely speaks to anyone. Rowan speaks to me, and I'm happier here than I ever would have been with you. You're settling, that's all this is. You're settling because you think you don't have other options." "No, Thomas, I settled when I agreed to marry you. This—" Elena spread her arms, encompassing the ranch, the mountains in the distance, the life she'd built. "This is me choosing. There's a difference." Before Thomas could respond, they heard hoofbeats. Rowan appeared around the barn, riding fast. He took in the scene, Elena and Thomas standing in the garden, and his expression went dark. He dismounted in one smooth motion and strode over. "Garrett, what are you doing here?" Talking to Elena. "She doesn't want to talk to you. I think she can speak for herself." "And she just did. You heard her. Now leave." Rowan's voice was dangerous. "Before I make you leave." Thomas looked between them, something bitter crossing his face. "I see how it is. You've moved on to him. The great Rowan Cross." "Get out," Elena said. "You'll regret this, both of you. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was wasting time talking to you." Elena's voice was steady. "Now get off this property before I shoot you myself." She meant it. Thomas must have seen that because he backed toward his horse, still clutching his hat. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is." Rowan stepped forward. "And if you come back here again, you'll be trespassing. I'll have you arrested." Thomas mounted up and rode away, kicking his horse harder than necessary. They watched him disappear over the ridge. When he was gone, Rowan turned to Elena. "You all right?" "Yes, better than all right, actually." She felt lighter somehow, like cutting that last thread connecting her to her old life. "He wanted me to give him another chance. I gathered. What did you tell him?" "That I wouldn't marry him if he was the last man in Montana." Rowan's mouth twitched. Strong words. "I meant them." Elena looked at him, her heart pounding. "I meant every word." Something shifted in Rowan's expression. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "Elena, Boss!" Miguel came running from the barn. "We got a problem with the south fence. Looks like someone tried to cut it again." The moment shattered. Rowan's face closed off, professional again. "Show me." He followed Miguel, leaving Elena standing in the garden, cursing the timing. Whatever he'd been about to say, it was gone now. The incident with the fence turned out to be minor, just some drifters testing their luck, easily chased off. But it left everyone on edge. Frank Henderson was in jail, but his influence remained. There were still people loyal to him, people who might try to cause trouble before the trial. Rowan doubled the watch rotations again. No one went anywhere alone. The ranch became a fortress. Elena threw herself into work, trying not to think about the almost moment with Rowan, trying not to analyze every glance, every word, every accidental touch. It was exhausting. Jim found her in the kitchen one evening, kneading bread with more force than necessary. "You're going to kill that dough." Elena looked down at the overworked mass in her hands and sighed. "You're right." Jim sat at the table. "Want to talk about it?" "Not particularly." "Going to make you anyway?" He poured himself coffee. "You and the boss. Something's happening there." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't. And I'm the Queen of England." Jim gave her a look. "I've known Rowan for 10 years, never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Elena's hands stilled. "How does he look at me?" "Like you're something precious, something he's afraid to touch because he might break it." Jim's voice was gentle, but also like he can't help himself from trying. "That's ridiculous. If you say you're just the cook, I'm going to dump this coffee over your head." Jim leaned forward. "You saved his life, stood up to Frank Henderson, shot a man to protect the ranch. You're not just anything." Elena sat down across from him, the fight draining out of her. "I don't know what I'm doing, Jim. I've never been good at this. The one time I tried, well, you know how that ended. Thomas Garrett was a fool. Rowan isn't. That's what makes it scarier. If this goes wrong, if I'm reading this all wrong..." She stopped, swallowing hard. "I can't survive being rejected again. Not by him." Jim was quiet for a long moment. "You know what I think? I think you're both so busy protecting yourselves that you're missing what's right in front of you." He stood, leaving his empty cup on the table. "Life's short, Miss Ward, and it's shorter out here. Don't waste time being afraid." After he left, Elena sat alone in the kitchen thinking about his words. Don't waste time being afraid. Easy to say, harder to do. But maybe he was right. Maybe fear was just another kind of prison, and she'd already escaped too many of those to build another one herself. The trial began on a Tuesday morning in late September. The territorial courthouse was packed. Ranchers, townspeople, even folks from neighboring counties who'd heard about the case. Frank Henderson's trial had become the biggest news in the territory. Elena sat in the front row with Rowan, Jim, and the boys. Across the aisle, Frank Henderson sat with his expensive lawyers, looking defiant. Marshal Dixon presented the evidence methodically. The cut fences, the burned barn, the testimony of witnesses who'd seen Henderson's men in the act, the paint horse, which had been identified and confiscated. One by one, witnesses took the stand. The ranchers who'd helped set the trap, Maria's brother, who testified despite his fear, describing what he'd seen the night of the fire, Jim and Miguel, who described the ambush. Then it was Elena's turn. She walked to the stand on shaking legs, acutely aware of every eye in the courtroom. The judge, a stern woman named McKenna, nodded at her encouragingly. State your name for the record. Elena Ward. Miss Ward, please describe the events of the night in question. Elena took a breath and began. She described hiding in the rocks, watching Henderson's men surround the cattle, the gunfight, the moment she'd fired her rifle. And why did you shoot Mr. Dale Henderson? The prosecutor asked. He was about to shoot Ben Carson, one of the ranch hands. He's 19 years old. I couldn't, her voice caught. I couldn't let him die. So you fired in defense of another person? Yes. Henderson's lawyer stood for cross-examination. He was a slick man in an expensive suit, and he looked at Elena like she was something he'd scraped off his shoe. Miss Ward, isn't it true that you were rejected by Mr. Thomas Garrett upon your arrival in town? Objection, Dixon said. Relevance? I'm establishing the witness's state of mind, Your Honor. Judge McKenna nodded. I'll allow it, but make it quick. The lawyer turned back to Elena. Miss Ward? Yes, Mr. Garrett ended our engagement. That must have been humiliating, devastating even. It was. And Mr. Cross offered you employment shortly after, took you into his home, gave you shelter. Elena saw where this was going. He offered me a job. I took it. Some might say you were vulnerable, desperate, perhaps willing to do anything to keep that position. Objection! Dixon was on his feet. Is there a question coming? Miss Ward, isn't it possible that you fired that weapon not in defense of Mr. Carson, but because Mr. Cross wanted you to? Because you were afraid of losing your position if you didn't? The courtroom erupted. Elena's hands clenched on the witness stand. Behind her, she heard Rowan's chair scrape back. Judge McKenna banged her gavel. Order, counselor, that's enough. The witness has been clear about her motivations. Your Honor, I'm simply suggesting that Miss Ward's testimony may be biased, and I'm suggesting you move on. Now. The lawyer backed down, but the damage was done. The implication hung in the air that Elena was some desperate woman who'd do anything for Rowan Cross. It wasn't entirely wrong, but it wasn't for the reasons they thought. After she was dismissed, Elena returned to her seat. Rowan's jaw was clenched so tight she thought he might crack a tooth. That bastard, he muttered. It's fine. It's not fine, he just Rowan. She touched his arm. I can handle myself, remember? He looked at her, something fierce in his eyes. I know you can. Doesn't mean you should have to. When Rowan took the stand, he was calm and precise, describing the attacks on his ranch, the evidence they'd gathered the night of the ambush. Henderson's lawyer tried the same tactics, suggesting Rowan had set everything up, that he'd manipulated Elena and the others. Rowan shut him down with cold, factual responses that left no room for interpretation. Did you manipulate Miss Ward into shooting Dale Henderson? No, Miss Ward makes her own decisions. Always has. But she works for you. She depends on you for her livelihood. She depends on herself. I just provide the opportunity. Rowan leaned forward. Your client tried to destroy my ranch, terrorize my people, and steal my cattle. Everything we did was in defense of what's ours. No manipulation required. The trial lasted 3 days. On the final day, the jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Frank Henderson was sentenced to 15 years in territorial prison. His men received lighter sentences, but all would serve time. The courtroom erupted in applause. Judge McKenna allowed it for a moment before calling for order. Outside the courthouse, people crowded around Rowan and Elena, offering congratulations. The Johnsons, the Petersons, even the sheriff, looking appropriately ashamed, shook their hands. Justice was served, Mrs. Johnson said. Thanks to you both. Elena accepted the praise, but all she could think about was getting home, away from the crowds and the noise and the weight of everyone's expectations. Finally, they managed to escape. The ride back to the ranch was quiet. Jim drove the wagon while Rowan and Elena rode alongside on horseback. When they reached the ranch, the sun was setting, painting everything gold and orange. Elena dismounted and stood there, looking at the house, the new barn, the corrals full of cattle. Home. This was home now. Elena. She turned to find Rowan standing close, his hat in his hands. I need to say something, and I need you to let me finish before you respond." Her heart started pounding. "All right. When you first arrived here, I hired you because I needed help. That's true. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being about need and started being about—" He stopped, struggling for words. "You changed everything. This place. Me. You made me remember what it feels like to trust someone, to want something more than just surviving." Elena's breath caught. "I know I'm not an easy man," Rowan continued. "I know I'm hard and closed off and probably terrible at this. But I also know that when Thomas showed up wanting you back, all I could think was that he didn't deserve you, that no one deserved you." He paused. "Except maybe me, if you'd let me try." "Rowan, I'm saying I want more than this, more than just working together. I want—" He stopped, then started again. "I want you, however you'll have me." Elena stared at him, her mind spinning. This was happening, actually happening. "Say something," Rowan said. "Please." "You're an idiot." He blinked. "What?" "You're an idiot if you think I'd say no." Elena stepped closer, her heart full to bursting. "I've been falling for you for months. I was just too scared to admit it." Rowan's expression transformed. "You were scared?" "Terrified. Of making another mistake. Of getting hurt again." She reached up and touched his face. "But I'm done being scared. Done letting fear make my decisions." "Elena." She kissed him. For a second, Rowan froze. Then his arms came around her, pulling her close, kissing her back with an intensity that stole her breath. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Elena laughed. "What?" Rowan asked. "Nothing. Just, this is not how I expected my life to turn out when I stepped off that train." "Better or worse?" Elena looked around at the ranch, at the mountains in the distance, at the man holding her like she was something precious. "Better," she said. "So much better." Rowan smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his whole face. Then he kissed her again, and Elena let herself fall into it, into him, into this impossible, wonderful life she'd somehow found. From the barn, she heard Jim's voice carrying across the yard. "About damn time!" The boys made themselves scarce after that, grinning like fools and elbowing each other. Elena heard their laughter trailing off toward the bunkhouse and felt her face heat up. "We just gave them enough gossip to last a year," she said. Rowan was still holding her, his arms solid and warm around her waist. "Let them talk. I've got more important things to think about." "Like what?" "Like how I'm going to convince you to marry me." Elena's heart stuttered. "Marry you?" "Eventually, when you're ready." Rowan's expression was serious now. "I'm not asking yet. I know it's too soon. But I want you to know that's where this is heading. For me, at least." Elena thought about Thomas, about the engagement that had brought her here, how desperate and scared she'd been, agreeing to marry a stranger just to escape her old life. This was nothing like that. This was choosing someone she knew, someone she trusted, someone who'd proven himself over and over. "Ask me when you're ready," she said, "and I'll give you my answer then." "Fair enough." Rowan kissed her forehead. "But I should warn you, I'm not good at romance. Don't expect poetry or flowers or any of that nonsense." "Good. I don't want any of that nonsense." "What do you want?" Elena considered the question. "Honesty. Partnership. Someone who sees me as an equal, not as something to be protected or managed." She paused. "And maybe someone who'll dance with me occasionally, even if we're both terrible at it." Rowan smiled. "I think I can manage that." They stood there in the fading light, holding each other, while the ranch settled into evening quiet around them. Elena felt something in her chest loosen, a knot she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt completely at peace. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The next few weeks brought a different kind of tension. The good kind, the kind that came from two people figuring out how to be together. Rowan was awkward about it at first, clearly out of practice with affection. He'd reach for Elena's hand, then pull back. Start to say something, then stop. Elena found it endearing and frustrating. "You can touch me, you know," she said one evening. They were on the porch again, their usual spot. I won't break. I know that. Then why do you keep pulling away? Rowan was quiet for a moment. Because for 10 years, I kept everyone at a distance. It's a hard habit to break. Well, break it. Elena took his hand deliberately, lacing their fingers together. I'm not Sarah. I'm not going to hurt you. I know you're not. That's not what I'm afraid of. Then what are you afraid of? He looked at their joined hands. That I'll mess this up. That I'll be too closed off or too demanding or too... He stopped. That I'll give you a reason to leave. Elena's chest ached. She turned to face him fully, using her free hand to tilt his chin up until he met her eyes. Listen to me. I'm not leaving. Not because you're difficult or closed off or demanding. Not because you mess up. Her voice was fierce. I'm here because I choose to be. Every day I'm choosing you, so stop waiting for me to change my mind. Rowan stared at her, something raw and vulnerable in his expression. Then he pulled her close and kissed her, hard and desperate, like he was trying to convince himself she was real. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. That got a laugh out of him, surprised and genuine. God help me. After that, things got easier. Rowan stopped pulling away, started reaching for her hand without hesitation, kissing her goodnight, pulling her into his arms when she passed him in the kitchen. The boys got used to seeing them together and stopped making comments, mostly because Jim threatened to make them muck out the stables for a month if they didn't shut up. Elena settled into this new reality, this life where she was not just the cook and housekeeper, but Rowan's partner, his equal. It felt right in a way nothing else ever had. But peace never lasted long out here. The trouble came from an unexpected direction. One morning, a lawyer from Denver arrived at the ranch with papers and an apology. Miss Ward, I'm Gerald Patterson. I represent the estate of Marcus Ward. Elena's hands went numb. My father? Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry to inform you that he passed away 3 months ago. The world tilted. Elena gripped the porch railing to keep steady. What? Heart failure. It was quick, according to the doctors. Patterson pulled documents from his case. He left you everything. The house in Philadelphia, his savings, his business assets. It's not a fortune, but it's substantial. Elena couldn't process it. Her father was dead, had been dead for months, and she'd had no idea. No letter, no telegram, nothing, because he didn't know where she was. Hadn't known she'd left Philadelphia for Montana. The guilt hit like a physical blow. Rowan appeared at her side, solid and steady. Miss Ward needs a moment. Can you wait inside? Of course. Patterson retreated into the house. When he was gone, Rowan turned to Elena. Breathe. She tried, failed, tried again. My father, I know, I'm sorry. I didn't even say goodbye, didn't tell him where I was going. He died thinking I'd just... Her voice broke. He died alone. You didn't know. Rowan's hands were on her shoulders, grounding her. You couldn't have known. But that didn't make it hurt less. They went inside. Patterson laid out the papers, explaining the inheritance in careful legal terms. The house was worth a considerable amount. The business, a small printing press, had been sold, with the proceeds added to the estate. All told, Elena was now worth about $15,000. It was more money than she'd ever imagined having. What do I do? She asked Rowan after Patterson left. Whatever you want. It's your inheritance. I don't know what I want. Elena paced the kitchen. Part of me wants to go back to Philadelphia, see the house one last time. But part of me never wants to see it again. Then don't decide now. Take some time. But time didn't make the decision easier. For days, Elena wandered the ranch in a fog, going through the motions of her work while her mind spun in circles. She had money now, independence. She could go anywhere, do anything. She could leave. The thought made her sick. Jim found her in the garden a week later, pulling weeds with more violence than necessary. You planning to uproot the whole garden? Maybe. He sat on the bench watching her work. You thinking about leaving? No. Yes. I don't know. Elena sat back on her heels. I have money now, Jim. Real money. I don't have to work anymore. Don't have to answer to anyone. So? So maybe I should do something with it. Travel, start a business, buy my own land. She gestured helplessly. Make something of myself. You already made something of yourself, right here. As what? The cook? The rancher's girlfriend? Jim's expression hardened. As the woman who stood up to Frank Henderson, who saved Ben's life, who helped bring this whole community together. He leaned forward. You think money makes you worth something? It doesn't. What you do, who you are, that's what matters. But I could be more. More than what? More than happy? More than loved? More than home? Jim shook his head. You're chasing something that doesn't exist, Elena. The grass isn't greener. It's just different grass. After he left, Elena sat in the garden, his words echoing in her head. Was that what she was doing? Chasing some idea of who she should be instead of accepting who she was? She'd spent so long running from her old life, fighting to prove herself, that she'd forgotten to ask if she actually wanted anything different than what she had. The answer settled quietly in her chest. No, she didn't. This was enough, more than enough. That night she found Rowan in the barn, checking on a mare about to foal. Can we talk? He looked up, immediately concerned. What's wrong? Nothing. I need to tell you something. Elena took a breath. I'm not leaving. The inheritance, the money, all of it, it doesn't change anything. This is where I want to be. Rowan stood slowly. You don't have to decide right now. If you need time to figure things out, I don't need time. I've already figured it out. She crossed to him. I want to invest the money in the ranch. Make it ours, not just yours. Expand the operation. Maybe buy some of the Henderson land when it goes up for auction. She paused. If you'll have me as a partner. Elena, I know what you're going to say, that I don't have to do this, that the money's mine to do with as I please, and you're right, it is mine. She met his eyes. And this is what I want to do with it. Build something here. With you. Rowan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Are you sure? Because once we do this, once we're partners in this, there's no going back. You'll be tied to this place. To me. I'm already tied to this place, already tied to you. Elena smiled. This just makes it official. Then yes. Rowan pulled her close. I'll have you as a partner, in the ranch, in everything. They kissed, slow and sweet, while the pregnant mare watched them with patient eyes. When they broke apart, Elena rested her head on Rowan's chest, listening to his heartbeat. I should write to the lawyer. Tell him to start the paperwork. Tomorrow, tonight, just stay here with me. So she did. The paperwork took weeks to finalize, but by late October it was done. Elena Ward was officially a co-owner of the Cross Ranch. Her name on the deed, her money in the operation, her voice equal to Rowan's in all decisions. The boys threw a party to celebrate. Miguel brought Maria, who brought her whole family. Half the town showed up, along with the ranchers who'd helped during the ambush. Even Sheriff Porter appeared, looking appropriately humbled. Congratulations, Miss Ward, he said. You've done well for yourself. Thank you, Sheriff. Elena kept her voice neutral. She'd forgiven him, mostly, but that didn't mean she'd forgotten. The party lasted until midnight. People danced and ate and told stories about Frank Henderson's trial, each retelling more exaggerated than the last. Elena found herself at the center of it all, no longer the outsider, but part of the community. It was overwhelming and wonderful. Late in the evening, Rowan pulled her aside. There's something I want to show you. He led her away from the party, out past the new barn to a spot overlooking the valley. The moon was full, casting everything in silver light. This is where I stood the night my father died, Rowan said quietly, trying to figure out how I was going to keep this place running. I was 23, didn't know anything about ranching, but I looked out at this land and I thought, this is mine now, to protect or destroy, to build on or abandon. Elena waited, sensing he had more to say. I chose to build, spent 10 years working myself into the ground, keeping everyone at a distance, convinced that was the only way to survive. He turned to face her. Then you showed up and proved me wrong. Showed me that letting people in doesn't make you weak. It makes you stronger. Rowan, he pulled a small box from his pocket and dropped to one knee. Elena's breath stopped. I know I said I'd wait until you were ready, but the truth is I've been ready since the day you pointed a rifle at Frank Henderson to protect me. His voice was rough with emotion. Elena Ward, will you marry me? The world narrowed to just the two of them. To this moment. To this question she'd been waiting for without realizing it. Yes, she said, her voice breaking. Yes, I'll marry you. Rowan stood and slipped the ring on her finger. A simple gold band with a small sapphire. Nothing extravagant, nothing fancy. Perfect. Then he kissed her, and the party erupted in cheers. Apparently, they'd had an audience. Elena laughed against Rowan's lips. How long were they watching? The whole time, probably. We'll never hear the end of this. I don't care. Rowan held her close. Let them talk. They were married a month later in a simple ceremony at the ranch. Elena wore a new dress, blue, not white, practical enough to wear again. Rowan wore his best suit and looked uncomfortable the entire time. The circuit judge performed the ceremony in the parlor, while everyone they knew crowded in to watch. Jim stood as Rowan's best man. Maria stood as Elena's maid of honor, beaming the entire time. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Rowan kissed Elena like they were the only two people in the world. Someone whooped. Someone else started clapping. Within seconds, the whole room was celebrating. The party afterward was even bigger than the one for the partnership. Food and drink flowed freely. People danced in the yard despite the cold. Miguel finally got up the courage to propose to Maria, who said yes while crying happy tears. Elena moved through it all in a daze, her hand constantly finding Rowan's, the ring on her finger feeling both strange and right. This was her life now, her home, her family. Later, when the guests had finally left and the house was quiet, Elena and Rowan stood on the porch, their porch, looking out at the land that was now theirs together. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up, Elena said, that this is all a dream. If it is, I'm having the same one. Rowan pulled her close. Still can't believe you said yes. Still can't believe you asked. I'm serious. You could have anyone, could go anywhere. Why choose this? Why choose me? Elena thought about the question, about the woman who'd stepped off that train 7 months ago, broken and desperate. About every moment since, the humiliation, the fear, the hard work, the slowly building hope. Because you saw me, she said finally. Not the woman Thomas rejected, not the desperate mail-order bride, not the charity case. You saw me, and you gave me the chance to see myself. Rowan's arms tightened around her. You did the same for me. Made me remember I was more than just this land, more than the walls I'd built. They stood there in the cold Montana night, holding each other, while the stars wheeled overhead. Winter came hard that year. Snow piled up against the fences, and the cattle huddled together for warmth. The ranch hands worked brutal hours keeping everything running. Elena cooked massive meals to keep everyone fed, learning to stretch ingredients, to make tough cuts tender, to waste nothing. It was exhausting, and she loved every minute of it, because this was hers. She'd earned it. Not through marriage or inheritance, but through sweat and determination, and refusing to quit when things got hard. On Christmas morning, Elena woke early and went to the kitchen. She was planning a feast, roast beef, potatoes, pie, everything she could think of. The boys deserved it after the brutal work they'd been putting in. She was rolling out pie crust when Rowan appeared, still in his nightshirt, hair sticking up at odd angles. What are you doing up? Cooking. Go back to bed. Can't. Too used to waking early. He poured coffee and sat at the table, watching her work. You know you don't have to do all this. I want to. It's Christmas. Still, we could have bought something from town. Elena gave him a look. Rowan Cross, are you suggesting my cooking isn't good enough? I'm suggesting you work too hard. And I'm suggesting you worry too much. She crimped the pie edges. Besides, I like cooking for everyone. Makes me feel useful. You are useful. Hell, you're essential. This place would fall apart without you. Flattery will get you nowhere. What about this? Rowan pulled a small wrapped package from his pocket. Elena wiped flour from her hands and took it carefully. Inside was a locket, gold, delicate, with space for 2 photographs. It's beautiful. Open it. She did. Inside was a tiny photograph of Rowan on one side, and on the other, a picture of the ranch house. Elena's throat tightened. Rowan, so you always have us with you, no matter where you go. She kissed him, tasting coffee and morning and home. I'm not going anywhere. I know, but still. The boys stumbled in around mid-morning, drawn by the smell of cooking. They ate like they were starving, which they probably were. Jim told embarrassing stories about Rowan as a young man. Miguel and Maria sat close together, planning their own wedding in the spring. It was loud and chaotic and perfect. After the meal, they exchanged small gifts. Elena had knitted scarves for everyone. The boys had pitched in to buy her a new set of cooking pots. Jim gave her a book of recipes his mother had collected. They spent the afternoon by the fire, too full to move, while snow fell quietly outside. This, Elena thought, was what happiness looked like. Not grand gestures or perfect moments, but small comforts shared with people you loved. She must have said it out loud because Rowan squeezed her hand. Yeah, he said quietly, it is. Spring came slowly, melting the snow inch by inch. With it came new challenges, fence repairs, calving season, planting the kitchen garden, but also new joys. Miguel and Maria's wedding in April was a celebration that brought the whole town together. Ben started courting the baker's daughter. Jack talked about buying his own land someday. The ranch was thriving. With Elena's investment, they'd expanded the herd, bought better breeding stock, improved the irrigation system. They were becoming one of the most successful operations in the territory. But more than that, they'd become a community, a family. One evening in May, Elena was planting tomatoes when she heard a horse approaching. She looked up to see a stranger, a woman, maybe 40, well-dressed, riding a fine mare. Can I help you? The woman dismounted. I'm looking for Elena Ward. I was told she lived here. I'm Elena Cross now. But yes, I'm who you're looking for. The woman's expression softened. I'm Margaret Ward, your father's sister, your aunt. Elena's hands went still. I didn't know I had an aunt. Your father and I were estranged, a stupid argument years ago. Margaret looked pained. I didn't learn about his death until recently, and when I went to Philadelphia to settle affairs, I discovered he'd been trying to find you, hired investigators and everything. Guilt flooded through Elena again. I should have told him where I was going. He understood why you didn't. I found his journal. He wrote about you constantly, how proud he was of your independence, how much he hoped you'd found happiness. Elena's vision blurred with tears. I did. I found it here. Margaret looked around at the ranch, at the mountains in the distance, at Rowan emerging from the barn. I can see that. He would have been glad. They talked for hours. Margaret stayed for dinner, charming the boys with stories about Elena's father as a young man. She promised to visit again to help Elena sort through her father's belongings that she'd preserved. Before she left, she pulled Elena aside. Your father's last journal entry was about you. He wrote that he hoped you'd stopped running long enough to realize you were already home, wherever that might be. Elena watched her aunt ride away, Rowan's arm warm around her shoulders, and knew her father had been right. She'd stopped running, stopped fighting against who she was supposed to be, and started becoming who she actually was. And she was home. Summer brought the Henderson land auction. With Frank in prison and his assets seized, the territorial government was selling off everything. Rowan and Elena bought the parcel that bordered their property, the one with the disputed water rights, for a fair price. It doubled the size of their operation overnight. We're going to need more help, Jim said, looking at maps of the new property. Already working on it. Rowan pointed to several marked locations, thinking we could build another bunkhouse here, maybe a second barn. Elena studied the plans. What about a school? Everyone looked at her. A school? Rowan repeated. There are families scattered all over this valley. Their children grow up without education. We have the land. We have the resources. She pointed to a spot near the main road. We could build a small school, hire a teacher, make it available to everyone. Jim started to smile. That's a hell of an idea. It's also expensive, Rowan said, but he was smiling too. But I suppose we can afford it now. The school was finished by fall. One room, sturdy and warm, with desks for 20 students and a small house for the teacher they hired, a young woman from Denver who was thrilled to take the position. On the first day of school, children from all over the valley arrived. Some walked miles. Others came on horseback with their parents. Elena stood with Rowan, watching them file in, and felt something warm and right settle in her chest. "This is good," Rowan said quietly. "What we're building here, it's bigger than just the ranch. It's a legacy." Elena took his hand. "Something that'll outlast us." "Speaking of legacy," Rowan turned to face her. "How would you feel about starting a family?" Elena's breath caught. They'd talked about it in vague terms someday and eventually, but never seriously. "Are you asking if I want children?" "I'm saying I do, with you, when you're ready." Elena thought about it. About tiny hands and midnight feedings and teaching someone to ride a horse. About the fear of losing them, of failing them, of not being enough. But also about the joy, the love, the chance to give a child everything she'd had and everything she hadn't. "I'm ready," she said, scared but ready. Rowan pulled her close. "We'll figure it out together, like everything else." By the time the first snow fell that winter, Elena was pregnant. She told Rowan on Christmas morning, the same day they'd celebrated their first anniversary. He cried. Actually cried, tears streaming down his face while he held her. "I never thought I'd have this," he said. "Any of this. A wife, a family, a future worth looking forward to." "Neither did I." Elena wiped his tears with her thumbs. "But here we are." The pregnancy was hard. Elena was sick constantly, exhausted, her body changing in ways that terrified her. But Rowan was there for every moment, bringing her tea when she couldn't keep food down, rubbing her back when it ached, reading to her when she couldn't sleep. The boys rallied around her too. Miguel's wife Maria, pregnant herself now, shared advice and sympathy. Jim took over more of the cooking. Jack and Ben competed to see who could make her laugh more. Spring came again, and with it, contractions. The birth was long and brutal and terrifying. Elena had never been so scared in her life, convinced she was going to die, convinced the baby was going to die, convinced everything was falling apart. But then the baby cried, loud and angry and alive, and Rowan was sobbing again, and Maria was wrapping the tiny body in blankets. "A girl," the midwife announced, "healthy and strong." Elena held her daughter for the first time and felt her entire world shift. This tiny person, red-faced and screaming, was hers to protect and love and raise. "She's perfect," Rowan whispered, looking at them both with wonder. "She's a mess," Elena said, laughing and crying at the same time. "But she's ours." They named her Sarah after Rowan's mother. It felt right, honoring the past while building the future. Sarah Cross grew up on the ranch, learning to ride before she could read, helping with chores as soon as she was old enough. She was stubborn and fearless and bright, with her mother's determination and her father's quiet strength. 2 years later, a son followed, James, named for Jim, who cried harder at his namesake's birth than anyone had ever seen. Elena's life became a blur of feeding schedules and skinned knees and bedtime stories. The ranch work continued, now balanced with motherhood, with teaching her children about the land and the animals and the community they were part of. It was exhausting, often overwhelming. Sometimes she fell into bed so tired she couldn't remember her own name, but it was also everything she'd never known she wanted. On Sarah's 5th birthday, Elena stood on the porch, that same porch where she'd stood so many times before, watching her daughter chase chickens while James toddled after her. Rowan was in the barn with Miguel, discussing next season's breeding program. Jim was teaching Ben's oldest boy how to rope. This was her life now, full and messy and loud and perfect. She thought about the woman she'd been 7 years ago, stepping off that train with nothing but fear and desperation. That woman wouldn't recognize her now, wouldn't believe what she'd become. Rancher, wife, mother, leader of a community, builder of legacies. But underneath all those titles was something simpler. Elena. Just Elena. The same woman who'd refused to give up when everything fell apart, who'd chosen to stand her ground instead of running away. That woman had always been strong. She'd just needed the chance to prove it. "Mama, watch me!" Sarah was trying to catch a particularly stubborn hen. "I'm watching!" The hen escaped. Sarah pouted, then immediately started chasing another one. Rowan emerged from the barn and made his way over, settling beside Elena on the porch railing. "She's going to be trouble when she's older." "She's trouble now," Elena smiled. "Gets it from her father." Her father is a respectable rancher and pillar of the community. Her father got into a fistfight at the general store last month. Henderson's nephew deserved it. He insulted you. Elena shook her head, amused. My hero. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play. After a while, Rowan spoke. "I was thinking about expanding the school, maybe adding a second room, hiring another teacher." "That's ambitious." "We can afford it, and the valley keeps growing. More families moving in all the time." He paused. "I was also thinking about running for territorial council, help shape policy, make sure small ranchers get a fair shake." Elena looked at him, surprised. "That's a big step." "I know, and I won't do it if you don't want me to, but I think I could make a difference." He met her eyes. "You taught me that, how to be part of something bigger." "Then you should do it." Elena took his hand. "I'll support you, whatever you decide. Even if it means more time away? More obligations? We'll figure it out, like everything else." Rowan kissed her temple. "Have I mentioned lately that I love you?" "Not in the last hour." "I love you, completely, forever." "I love you too." Elena leaned against him. "Even when you're getting into fistfights at the general store." He laughed, and Elena closed her eyes, soaking in this moment. The warmth of the sun, the sound of her children's laughter, the solid presence of the man beside her. This was what they'd built. Not just a ranch or a business or a legacy, but a life. A real, messy, complicated, beautiful life. And it had all started with a single choice on a train platform 7 years ago. The choice to stay, to fight, to believe she deserved better than what she'd been offered. That choice had led to everything else. Every hardship and triumph, every moment of joy and fear, every relationship and responsibility. Elena Ward, Elena Cross now, had learned something important in those 7 years. Something she wished she could tell that terrified woman on the platform. You are not what happens to you. You are what you choose to do about it. Thomas Garrett had rejected her. Yes, that was his choice. But her choice, to refuse his pity money, to take the job with Rowan, to stand up to Frank Henderson, to invest her inheritance in the ranch, to build a school, to raise a family. Those choices had defined her, had made her who she was. Not a victim, not someone to be pitied or dismissed, just a woman who'd refused to break when the world tried to break her. And that, Elena thought, was worth everything. "Mama, Daddy, come play with us." Sarah was waving frantically, James bouncing beside her. Elena and Rowan exchanged a look. "Duty calls," he said. "So it does." They went to their children, leaving the porch behind, stepping into the chaos and joy of family life. And as Elena scooped up James while Rowan chased Sarah around the yard, she felt grateful. Not for the hardships that had brought her here, but for the strength she'd found to overcome them. Because that strength had always been there. She just needed to claim it. And once she had, there was nothing she couldn't build. The sun set over the Montana mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The Cross Ranch settled into evening quiet, smoke rising from the chimney, lights glowing warm in the windows. Inside, a family gathered for dinner. Outside, the land stretched vast and endless, full of promise and possibility. And on the porch, 2 empty chairs waited for the next quiet moment, the next conversation, the next chapter in a story that was still being written. One choice at a time, one day at a time, one moment at a time, together.